Chapter 2562. One of the three great sword immortals, Shadowless, had died. The cultivators in the divine firmament main hall were shocked and shocked. Even Old Man Soul Capturer's death at the hands of book immortal Yunju did not cause such a huge reaction. After all, Old Man Soul Capturer was just an ordinary perfected immortal with some special means. Meanwhile, Shadowless came from the Great Gene Immortal Kingdom and was one of the three great sword immortals. He had been famous for many years and his assassination methods were unpredictable. Unexpectedly, he died on the spot today. Moreover, in everyone's eyes, Shadowless was killed by chess immortal Junyu in a single move. He did not even have the strength to resist. In the entire divine firmament main hall, only a few people noticed something strange. Junyu, who was among them, felt it even more clearly. On the surface, Shadowless had died at her hands. However, in reality, with the power she had just released, it was very difficult to kill Shadowless in a single move. Both sides were in a stalemate for a while. And in this short period of time, many variables would occur. For example, if Mengyao, the Moonlight Sword Immortal, and the others attacked, Shadowless would have a chance to escape. However, the moment both sides exchanged blows, Su Zimo released his peerless divine power and struck Shadowless. Normally, the peerless divine power of a heaven immortal would not be able to threaten an expert of Shadowless level. However, both sides were in a stalemate. Junyu could clearly sense that Shadowless' lifespan was decreasing rapidly. The power in his body was also rapidly depleting. That was why Shadowless could not hold on and was destroyed by her star chessboard. As for Ju Wuing, he died without leaving behind a corpse. The bystanders simply did not know what had happened to Ju Wuing in that instant. Instead of saying that Shadowless died at her hands, it was more accurate to say that Su Zimo made use of her power to kill Shadowless. Junyu glanced sideways and took a deep look at Su Zimo. She was entrusted by someone to protect this academy disciple. However, she did not know much about this scholarly cultivator and had only heard of him. It was only now that Junyu realized that this person was indeed special. To be able to release a peerless divine power that could threaten perfected immortals at the heaven immortal realm meant that this divine power had already touched the threshold of a supreme divine power. At the moment of his death, Ju Wuing probably didn't expect that he would die in the hands of a heavenly immortal. Perhaps this was his fate. When Shadowless tried to assassinate Su Zimo in the Ash Cloud Mountain, Su Zimo retaliated with fleeting youth. Unfortunately, he failed to kill Shadowless. And now, Shadowless had attacked Su Zimo for the second time. Su Zimo looked for an opportunity to counterattack for the second time. Finally, with the help of the chess deity Junyu, he killed her. The chess immortal is too strong. That's right. Fairy Junyu had just appeared, but she already scolded true immortal Mu Feng and forced him to leave. Now, she killed Shadowless with a single strike. Such power, the way I see it, it won't end well for both sides. Fairy Meow's side is made up of true immortals who have been famous for a long time. They have the advantage in numbers and won't back down easily. A burst of discussion came from the crowd. Fairy Junyu, you're too ruthless. A true immortal of the Dajin Celestial Kingdom shouted with a dark expression. Shadowless had an extremely high status among the true immortals of the Dajin Celestial Kingdom. It was equivalent to the Moonlight Sword Immortal's status in the Qingquan Academy and Fairy Mingyao's status in the Flying Celestial Sect. Now that Shadowless was dead, the true immortals of the Dajin Celestial Kingdom would definitely not let this matter rest. Spring Breeze Sword Immortal's eyes gradually revealed a sharp glint. He said slowly, Fairy Junyu, since you insist on protecting this foreign race, don't blame us for not showing mercy. The Moonlight Sword Immortal's body shone brightly as she said in a low voice, Chess deity Junyu, since you want to challenge me, I'll fulfill your wish today. Ha, Yunju chuckled, a mocking look in her eyes. He challenged you to a one-on-one battle. Now, you want to join forces with someone else. Do you have any shame? That's right. Yun Ting did not mind the commotion and said loudly, Moonlight Sword Immortal, if you still have any shame, then fight the chess immortal one-on-one. The Moonlight Sword Immortal's face darkened and she did not say a word. How would she dare to fight the chess immortal one-on-one? If the two of them fought one-on-one, there would be no doubt about the outcome. Moreover, the chess immortal was clearly someone who did not have any scruples. If this woman really went crazy, she would even dare to kill him. In many people's hearts, the chess immortal was a crazy woman who went around looking for people to fight. Everyone was afraid of her. Meng Yao plucked the strings of her zither, interrupting everyone's thoughts and attracting a lot of attention. Today's matter stems from the identity of the Academy's Su Zimo. Meng Yao said calmly, "Those who are not of our race will definitely have ulterior motives. This person sneaked into the Qiankuan Academy and even wants to fight for the heaven role. Everyone has the right to kill him. There's naturally no need to fight one-on-one against a foreign race." Meng Yao's words temporarily resolved the Moonlight Sword Immortal's awkwardness. "That's right." Perfected Immortal Wu Feng also said loudly, "Junyu, with your strength alone, you can't protect him." Meng Yao and the others had been plotting for a long time. Today they had already made a move. Now that things had reached this stage, it was like an arrow on a bow that had to be released. Yunju smiled and said loudly, "Wu Feng, don't forget that Sister Emo Qing and I are still here." Emo Qing didn't say anything but nodded vigorously. "The two of you don't have to do anything. Just protect him well." Junyu glanced sideways and said to Yunju and Emo Qing. Then, Junyu turned her head and glanced at Meng Yao, the Moonlight Sword Immortal, and the others. She said, "All of you are considered top-notch perfected immortals in the Divine Firmament Immortal Realm. Since all of you are gathered here today, it saves me the trouble of looking for you one by one. Let's fight." Junyu shouted and threw the star chessboard in Meng Yao's direction. The star chessboard spun in midair. In an instant, everyone felt as if they were in the starry sky, surrounded by billions of stars. It was dazzling. Everyone's figures even fell uncontrollably toward the star chessboard. Swoosh! It was too fast. In the blink of an eye, the star chessboard was already in front of Meng Yao. Meng Yao's expression changed drastically. Although she hadn't collided with the star chessboard yet, the terrifying power contained in the star chessboard made her feel suffocated. She even felt a strong sense of danger. So powerful! Meng Yao didn't have time to think. She didn't dare to collide with the star chessboard head-on. She plucked the zither immortal with her fingers. A strand of zither music sounded. Then, her figure seemed to merge into the strand of zither music and disappeared from the spot. This was a life-saving escape technique that she had cultivated. She wouldn't use it unless she had no other choice. The zither immortal's casual attack had made her feel immense pressure. Meng Yao had used a secret escape technique to avoid the star chessboard. But there was still a perfected immortal from the Flying Immortal sect behind her. Meng Yao had suddenly disappeared, but the star chessboard was still ferocious. The perfected immortal from the Flying Immortal sect saw the star chessboard flying toward him, but he couldn't react in time. His entire body was smashed into pieces by the star chessboard. Blood spurted out, and his essence spirit was destroyed. He died on the spot. Junyu attacked again and killed a perfected immortal. This exchange instantly stirred up the battlefield. The Moonlight Sword Immortal, Spring Wind Sword Immortal, True Immortal Wu Feng, and the other perfected immortal experts all attacked. A great battle broke out. Chapter 2563. Junyu attacked, and she actually wanted to forcefully resist dozens of true immortal realm experts by herself. Even Emo Qing and Yunju couldn't help but exclaim in admiration when they saw this scene. If one wanted to fight for the title of Supreme Perfected Immortal, one had to have extraordinary means and shocking boldness. Junyu is indeed very powerful, but she's still a little inferior to him. Emo Qing suddenly thought of someone. She couldn't help but recall the scenes in hell, and she was a little absent-minded. Immortal King Qingyang leaned on his chair and watched this scene calmly. There was a faint smile on his face, but he still had no intention of interfering. He wanted to see how today's matter would end up. A battle between perfected immortals was much more interesting to him than the Divine Firmament Convention. The central area of the Divine Firmament Hall had completely turned into a battlefield. The battle between perfected immortals was terrifying. Many divine weapons, divine powers, and mystic techniques were rampaging on the battlefield. Every collision was earth-shattering. The aftershock of the collision between perfected immortals could easily kill many heaven immortals. The surrounding cultivators retreated again and again. This time, Mingyao's fingers strummed the zither, and the sound of the zither lingered on. The dozen or so ferocious beasts summoned by Mo Qing's painting book gradually couldn't hold on. Their Dao techniques disappeared and they all dissipated. With the Moonlight Sword Immortal, Spring Wind Sword Immortal, and Perfected Immortal Wufeng leading the charge, the remaining dozens of perfected immortals unleashed a torrential attack on Junyu. Stars scattered chess pieces. Facing such pressure, Junyu's battle intent became even more violent. She threw the chessboard in her hand into the air and unleashed her unique divine power. Bush, bush, bush. The chessboard slowly rotated, and the 361 black and white chess pieces on it quickly bounced up and shot toward the dozens of perfected immortals around her. Every chess piece on the star chessboard looked not much bigger than a fingernail. But in truth, every single Go piece was refined by a star, fused with Dao, and finally condensed into a Go piece. They looked like chess pieces, but in fact, they were stars. Otherwise, Junyu wouldn't have been able to injure Ju Wuying with the help of a chess piece. The 361 chess pieces exploded out, equivalent to 361 stars attacking at the same time. The momentum was terrifying and unstoppable. The expressions of the dozens of true immortals changed drastically. Meng Yao showed a grave expression. The light from her Dao fruit spread out continuously. His 10 fingers strummed the zither, and his finger techniques became more and more exquisite. The sound of the zither also became more and more hurried, stirring up a murderous intent that seemed to condense into something substantial. Meng Yao had already pushed her zither skills to the limit, trying her best to help the other cultivators deal with the 36 black and white chess pieces. The sound of the zither was bleak and endless. Ripples appeared in the void and collided with the 36 black and white Go pieces. As a matter of fact, if Meng Yao had not taken action this time and used her zither to block and resolve the collision of the numerous black and white chess pieces, more than half of the dozens of genuine immortals would have been killed or injured. Even Shadowless could not stop it, let alone other true immortals. Boom, boom, boom. The 361 black and white chess pieces broke through the obstruction of the zither music and collided with the divine weapons, divine abilities, and secret arts of the dozens of true immortals, resulting in a series of deafening noises. Sparks flew in all directions and light bloomed. Even with the help of the zither immortal, he could not neutralize the full power of the black and white chess pieces. Among the dozens of true immortals, half of them coughed out blood and were severely injured, falling from the sky. There were also a few true immortals who were not strong enough and died on the spot after being struck by a few chess pieces. A series of exclamations sounded from the crowd. The zither immortal was so strong that he was able to gain the upper hand despite fighting against many alone. The combined forces of the zither immortal, Moonlight Sword Immortal, Spring Wind Sword Immortal, and true immortal Wufeng could not suppress the aura of the zither immortal. A few black and white chess pieces slammed towards Meng Yao. Clang, clang. Meng Yao had a calm expression as her fingertips strummed the zither strings a few times. The sound of the zither condensed into divine weapons one after another that collided with the incoming chess pieces. There was a series of crisp sounds as the divine weapons condensed from the zither music dissipated. As for the black and white chess pieces, they were almost exhausted. Meng Yao waved her sleeves and swept the chess pieces away with ease. The Moonlight Sword Immortal, Spring Wind Sword Immortal, and true immortal Wufeng used their own methods to defend against Junyu's supreme divine ability as well. Just this move alone showed the difference between the other true immortals and the 4 true immortals. Junyu's attacks did not stop. After the scattered stars chessboard was released, she leaped onto the chessboard and sped towards the Moonlight Sword Immortal. The Moonlight Sword Immortal had just neutralized the attacks of the black and white chess pieces when Junyu arrived on the scattered stars chessboard. Clang. The Moonlight Sword Immortal did not have time to think as she slashed out with her sword to block the scattered stars chessboard. Immediately after, the Moonlight Sword Immortal pushed her blood chi to the limit and released her bloodline avatar. At the same time, the Spring Wind Sword Immortal, True Immortal Wufeng, and even the Zither Immortal, Mengyao, attacked. They released their bloodline avatars at the same time and charged towards Junyu. Boom! Junyu didn't hesitate either. Behind her, a vast and mysterious starry sky suddenly appeared. This starry sky seemed to be her chessboard. Junyu stepped on the Tianyuan position of the chessboard and seemed to be in an undefeatable position. She could dominate the starry sky and control the power of this starry sky. Boom! The bloodline avatars of both sides collided and devoured each other continuously. It was earth-shattering. Break! The Moonlight Sword Immortal and Spring Breeze Sword Immortal released their unique sharpness and killing intent. The two of them joined forces and finally broke Junyu's starry sky into two. Of course, their bloodline avatars could not hold on any longer and were on the verge of collapse. The four of them attacked again. The Spring Breeze Sword Immortal's sword technique was extremely delicate and continuous. His attacks came one after another and completely sealed the space around Junyu. The Moonlight Sword Immortal's sharpness was even brighter and her sword technique was even sharper. Their sword techniques, one hard and one soft, one yang and one yin, complemented each other and their battle strength increased greatly. Perfected Immortal Wufeng held a sword in his left hand and an axe in his right. He joined forces with Meng Yao and supported each other, cutting off all of Junyu's escape routes. The four true immortals joined forces and released shocking battle strength. Even the two spectators, Yunju and Mo Qing, felt that something was amiss and frowned slightly. All of a sudden, Junyu calmly took a step in a certain direction. This step was incomparably profound, like an antelope hanging its horn, untraceable. However, it was just a single step and she broke free from the four true immortals' blockade. 9 Palace's subtle steps. When he saw Junyu's movement technique, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat and he murmured softly. This movement technique was released by a black-robed woman when Wu Dao's true body underwent the 10th tribulation of the true martial realm. Later on, he found out from Lin Luo that this movement technique was called the 9 Palaces' subtle steps and was imparted to her by Fairy Ling Long. Up till now, Su Zimo knew that the only people who knew this movement technique were Fairy Ling Long and Lin Luo. Even Lin Lei and the Human Emperor had not learned it. Back then, under a freak combination of factors, he had released it once. However, in reality, he did not master the 9 Palaces' subtle steps. It was merely a flash of inspiration and it would be difficult for him to replicate it in the future. To think that he would see this mysterious movement technique from the Chess Immortal again today. End of chapter. Chapter 2564. Of course, be it Lin Luo or Chess Immortal Junyu, their 9 Palaces' subtle steps were not as exquisite as the footwork of the black-robed woman that Wu Dao's main body witnessed during his tribulation transcendence. Just as Su Zimo was deep in thought, Junyu broke free from the encirclement of Meng Yao, the Moonlight Sword Immortal, and the other 3. Without pausing, she counterattacked. Arriving before Meng Yao, Junyu raised her hand and slapped down towards her face. Heavenly Essence Strike. Junyu shouted softly. The center of the star chessboard was the Heavenly Essence position. That mystic technique was equivalent to turning the entire battlefield into a chessboard. By occupying the Heavenly Essence position, one could mobilize all the power of the chessboard and release the strongest attack. Meng Yao and the others attacked without any openings, but Junyu broke free from them. With that, Meng Yao and the others were instantly disadvantaged. It felt as though they were in a game of chess where Junyu's shocking move reversed the situation with a single move. The battlefield was a chessboard and every single move was a gamble. Although Meng Yao had the advantage in numbers, they were merely Junyu's pawns in this chessboard. Meng Yao's heart skipped a beat and she retreated hurriedly. At the same time, she raised her zither and gathered her quintessential essence to block in front of her. Bang! Junyu's palm slapped the bottom of Meng Yao's zither in defeat. Meng Yao shuddered. Even with the zither blocking and neutralizing much of the power of the Heavenly Essence Strike, Meng Yao could not defend against it. Her organs trembled and she spat out a mouthful of blood. Buzz. Not only that, one of the strings on the zither was snapped by Junyu's palm. The zither string snapped so close that Meng Yao could not react at all. The snapped zither string was incomparably sharp and whipped Meng Yao's face, leaving behind a bloody wound. Initially, her peerless face was devastatingly beautiful. But now, there was such a wound that her flesh was torn apart and she looked somewhat menacing. Many cultivators were shocked when they saw that. Right now, Meng Yao was coughing out blood and her hair was disheveled. Anyone who saw her would not associate her with the four fairies. Of course, the wound on her face was only a superficial wound for perfected immortals. With a little rest and recuperation, it would be as good as new without leaving any scars. However, this matter was still a huge blow to Meng Yao. She enjoyed the feeling of being in the limelight the most. She was already used to it. Countless cultivators surrounded her and knelt before her, like stars surrounding the moon. Now, her miserable and hideous appearance was seen by millions of cultivators, and this was simply an unprecedented heavy injury to her. It would also have a huge negative impact on her reputation. Junyu! Meng Yao realized something and screamed. Her eyes were filled with resentment. But at this moment, she no longer had the heart to continue fighting. She took the opportunity to withdraw from the battlefield and wanted to heal the wound on her face at the first possible moment. Junyu also did not continue to pursue. As she attacked Dream Pearl, her feet moved, causing the star-scattered chessboard to spin at high speed, smashing towards True Immortal Edgeless. True Immortal Edgeless' pupils contracted, a solemn look on his face. At that instant, it was as if he could sense a vast and mysterious starry sky surging toward him, leaving him nowhere to hide. Kill! True Immortal Edgeless let out a loud roar. He condensed his ki, then used his sword in his left hand and his hatchet in his right, chopping down viciously towards the starry skies in front of him. Boom! The heavy sword and gigantic axe collided with the star-scattered chessboard, causing sparks to fly everywhere. True Immortal Edgeless only felt a sharp pain in his hands. The web between his thumb and forefinger was torn, and the heavy sword and gigantic axe were sent flying from his hands. His arms were so shaken that they lost all feeling. True Immortal Edgeless' expression changed drastically. Without hesitation, he turned and fled. At that moment, the Moonlight Sword and Spring Breeze Sword had already arrived before Junyu. The sword light was cold and sharp. Sword Dao was the most lethal. Junyu did not dare to be careless. With a thought, more than 10 black chess pieces sped over and landed on the Spring Breeze Sword instantly. Those chess pieces seemed to have a strong magical power that attached themselves to the Spring Breeze Sword and could not be thrown off. The Spring Breeze Sword Immortal's Sword Dao was superior in terms of its intricate swordsmanship. It was like the wind that could penetrate every opening. But now, with more than 10 black chess pieces on the Spring Breeze Sword, the Spring Breeze Sword Immortal suddenly felt that his Destiny Sword was extremely heavy and could not release any intricate swordsmanship. On the other side, more than 10 white chess pieces were attached to the Moonlight Sword Immortal's sword. The Moonlight Sword's advantage was its speed. The Moonlight Sword Immortal had unleashed the speed of his Sword Dao to the extreme, which was why he was able to kill his way to his current fame. However, with more than 10 white chess pieces on the Moonlight Sword, his swordsmanship became extremely slow and lost its greatest threat. Any Heaven Immortal present would probably be able to dodge it, let alone Chess Immortal Junyu. What was even stranger was that there seemed to be a mysterious connection between the black and white chess pieces. Although the two Sword Immortals were attacking Junyu, their Sword Dao trajectories had completely deviated under the influence of the black and white chess pieces. They could not even touch the corner of Junyu's clothes. While Junyu was fighting the 4 perfected immortals, she did not stop attacking the other perfected immortals. Those who were proficient in the Tao of chess could see the big picture extremely well. Once the dozens of perfected immortals attacked her, it was equivalent to falling into her chess game. Everyone was under her control. A perfected immortal expert from the Flying Immortal Sect and the Great Gene Immortal Kingdom were killed by Junyu's black and white chess pieces on the spot. Of the 4 perfected immortals, Meng Yao and Wufeng had been defeated. The remaining 2 sword immortals, Moonlight and Spring Breeze, could also be severely injured at any time. With the strength of the two sword immortals, it was already difficult for them to withstand Jun Yu's attacks. The other perfected immortals were like clay chickens and pottery dogs in Jun Yu's chess game. They were killed in a disorderly manner and were utterly defeated. Not long after the two sides exchanged blows, 10 perfected immortals, including Wu Ying, had already died in Jun Yu's hands. The smile on immortal King Qingyang's face gradually disappeared, and he frowned. He had originally planned to ignore it, wanting to see how much trouble this group of juniors could cause in the end. However, the scene before him had already exceeded his expectations. Chess immortal Jun Yu was even more powerful than he had imagined. She was decisive in killing and did not have the slightest weakness of a woman. She was simply fearless. Immortal King Qingyang even suspected that if he did not stop her, Jun Yu would even kill Meng Yao, Moonlight, and the rest. Just as immortal King Qingyang was hesitating, his expression suddenly changed. He suddenly reached into the void and grabbed a message talisman. When immortal King Qingyang saw this message talisman, he narrowed his eyes slightly. After thinking for a while, he stood up and emitted an immortal king-level divine sense pressure that descended on the divine firmament palace. The pressure of this enormous divine sense descended, and the two sides on the battlefield were no longer able to continue fighting. Moonlight Sword Immortal and Spring Breeze Sword Immortal were already covered in sweat, and their faces were pale. If immortal King Qingyang had been half a step slower, the two of them would have turned and fled. Chapter 2565. Alright, let's end today's matter here. Immortal King Qingyang's voice was neither fast nor slow, but it contained an invisible majesty. Everyone present, including chess immortal Jun Yu, did not continue to pester him. At this moment, the wounds on Meng Yao's face had already healed. She looked at Su Zimo, who was not far away, and felt indignant. She could not help but say, "Immortal King Qingyang, this lad's identity is suspicious. Senior, please take action and verify his true identity." "There's no need." Immortal King Qingyang said indifferently, "Just now, the Patriarch of the Academy sent a letter. It said very clearly that this lad is not a dragon and has nothing to do with the dragon world." The Patriarch of the Academy had stepped in. Hearing this, everyone realized that Su Zimo had completely escaped from danger. The slander that Meng Yao, the Moonlight Sword Immortal, and the others had just slandered him seemed even more laughable now. "I knew long ago that Su Zimo definitely has nothing to do with the dragon world. That's right. If he was of a foreign race, wouldn't the Patriarch of the Academy have discovered it long ago? Why would he let him join the sect?" For the Patriarch of the Academy to step in to protect him, it seems like the Qiankuan Academy thinks highly of this Su Zimo. Among the cultivators who were discussing, many of them were shouting loudly just now, wanting to tear Su Zimo into pieces. But now, these people changed their attitudes so quickly that it was amazing. The Moonlight Sword Immortal's expression was somewhat ugly. He knew in his heart that he had failed today, and it would be very difficult for him to have another chance to attack Su Zimo in the future. With the potential that Su Zimo had revealed now, he would definitely become a perfected immortal in the future. At that time, he would be the personal disciple of the Patriarch. Furthermore, with Su Zimo's foundation, he might even threaten his position in the academy in the future. Right now, he could only rely on Yunting to kill Su Zimo in the battle for the top of the heaven roll. Only then would he be able to resolve the matter in his heart. The Patriarch of the Academy is truly meticulous and omniscient. He even knows about the matters of the Divine Firmament Palace. Immortal King Qingyang murmured meaningfully, "Junior brother Su, you can rest assured now." Mo Qing heaved a sigh of relief and said, "The Academy has always been fair. We will never let you be wronged or slandered. Master has personally come out to protect you this time. Let's see who still dares to say anything." Mo Qing looked at the Moonlight Sword Immortal with disgust. The Moonlight Sword Immortal's performance this time had thoroughly disappointed her senior brother. Originally, she did not have any feelings for the Moonlight Sword Immortal, but at least in her heart, she still acknowledged him as her senior brother. After today, she wouldn't even acknowledge the identity of senior brother Yuehua. Su Zimo remained silent. Of course, he was grateful that the patriarch of the academy was willing to help. But he didn't agree with Emo Qing's words of fairness. For someone like the Moonlight Sword Immortal, who colluded with outsiders to attack her fellow disciples, she should be severely punished. A light punishment would be to cripple his cultivation and expel him from the academy. A heavy punishment would be to kill him. But the patriarch of the academy did not say anything. Of course, there might be some difficulties and other reasons. Su Zimo was somewhat dissatisfied, but he would not voice it out, nor would he use the power of the sect to suppress the Moonlight Sword Immortal. Today's matter was a matter of life and death between the two sides. There was no room for negotiation. Only using the sect rules to punish the Moonlight Sword Immortal was letting him off too lightly. One day, Su Zimo would personally kill him. At that moment, Immortal King Azure's son said loudly, "Such a change will happen in the Divine Firmament Immortal Palace. The Heaven List ranking battle will be postponed for 3 days." No one had any objections to this. Firstly, the Divine Firmament Hall was already in a mess and needed to be rebuilt. This was originally a battlefield prepared for the Heaven List ranking battle. How could it withstand the killing of dozens of perfected immortals? The entire battlefield had been reduced to ruins, and there was almost no place to stand. Secondly, more than 10 perfected immortal experts had died in the battle just now. Even one of the 3 great sword immortals, Shadowless, had died. This was considered a major matter. Both the Great Gene Immortal Kingdom and the Flying Immortal Sect needed some time to deal with it. Of course, 3 days was not a time for the many cultivators who came to participate in the Divine Firmament Immortal meeting. In the Divine Firmament Palace, there were all kinds of markets for many cultivators to search for and exchange treasures. It was extraordinarily lively. Every year, there would be some cultivators who would find treasures in these markets. After saying this, Immortal King Qingyang floated away. The many cultivators in the Divine Firmament Hall discussed the battle between the perfected immortals excitedly and gradually dispersed. Some walked around the Divine Firmament Palace and strolled around. Some returned to their residences to recuperate and adjust their states to prepare for the Heaven List ranking battle in 3 days. Su Zimo, tell me honestly, what's your relationship with my sister? At that moment, Yun Ting's voice sounded in Su Zimo's mind. His tone was unfriendly. We can be considered friends. Su Zimo answered. Friends? Who are you kidding? What kind of friends can make my sister work so hard? Yun Ting snorted and said sourly, even if something happened to me, my sister might not be so nervous. He had long noticed that Yun Zhu treated Su Zimo differently. Yun Zhu's performance today confirmed his guess even more. Su Zimo, I'm warning you, don't you dare have any ideas about my sister. Yun Ting sent another voice transmission and said fiercely. Su Zimo was a little helpless. You've misunderstood. There's nothing between me and Yun Zhu. In his opinion, Yun Zhu was willing to stand out and help him only because he had saved her life in the Avicii Hell. This matter involved Wu Dao's true body, so he naturally would not explain it to Yun Ting in detail. Hey! Right then, Yun Zhu suddenly sent a voice transmission to Su Zimo with her spirit consciousness and asked in a seemingly casual manner, How do you know Junyu? Su Zimo said, I don't know her. This is the first time I've seen her. Yun Zhu naturally did not believe him. She sneered in her heart and pursed her lips. You don't even know her. Why is she so protective of you? I'm not too sure either. Su Zimo vaguely guessed a reason in his heart, but he could not confirm it. Su Zimo, follow me. Right then, Junyu turned around and came in front of Su Zimo. Su Zimo was stunned for a moment and asked instinctively, Where are we going? To my room, Junyu said. Then she took the lead and left. Su Zimo hesitated for a moment. In order to confirm the guess in his heart, he still decided to follow. Yun Zhu gritted her teeth slightly and rolled her eyes at Su Zimo. She thought to herself, You still say that you don't know Junyu? You're already going to her room. Mo Qing's expression was calm and she did not say anything. However, she followed behind Su Zimo. Sister Mo Qing. Yun Zhu hurriedly pulled Mo Qing back and said, Junyu invited Suzimo. Let's not go over. How can we do that? Emo-ching frowned slightly. 3 days. What if those people are unwilling to give up and attack junior brother Su again? It's better to follow. It's safer. That's true. Yunju's eyes lit up and she nodded. Let's go and take a look together. Chapter 2566. Suzimo and Junyu left the Divine Firmament main hall together and headed to the Mountain and Sea Celestial Sect's resting place. As for Painting Fairy Emo-ching and Book Fairy Yunju, they followed behind him. That scene was witnessed by many cultivators and their jaws dropped to the ground. They did not know the inside story and naturally had their imaginations run wild. Suzimo did not know that the gossip about him and the 3 fairies had spread throughout the 9-cloud celestial realm in less than 3 days. Moreover, the commotion and impact of this matter far exceeded that of the Divine Firmament Immortal Association. Not long after, Suzimo and Junyu arrived at a quiet house. Passing through the fake mountains, flowing water and a courtyard surrounded by greenery, Suzimo and Junyu entered a room before the door closed. Yunju and Emo-ching followed them all the way to the front of the house. Emo-ching gradually stopped when she saw Suzimo and Junyu enter the room. She stood in the courtyard and admired the flowers and plants around her. She did not seem to have any intention of entering the room. Sister Emo-ching, why aren't you going? Yunju blinked and asked. Emo-ching was a little surprised and asked, where are we going? Yunju pointed to the room not far away and whispered, Sister, aren't you curious about what the 2 of them are doing in there? I'm not curious. Emo-ching shook her head slightly and said, the door is closed. They must have something important. It's not good for us to disturb them. Besides, to protect junior brother Su's safety, we can just stay here. There's no need to go in. Yunju stomped her feet and looked helplessly at the innocent Emo-ching. She felt angry and amused. In this world, there weren't many things that could pique Emo-ching's interest. She was curious, but Emo-ching did not care. Emo-ching saw that Yunju seemed to have something on her mind. She frowned and seemed to understand something. Sister, are you worried that junior brother Su is in danger? Emo-ching smiled and said, don't worry. Based on Taoist Junyu's performance just now, she probably won't harm junior brother Su. Yunju was speechless. She naturally could not say what was on her mind. She could only hesitate and stand outside with Emo-ching. Inside the room. The moment the door closed, Suzimo could clearly feel that the entire room seemed to be shrouded by an invisible force that could block all external senses. It was as if he had entered Junyu's chess game and could only be manipulated by her. Fellow Taoist Junyu, thank you for your help this time. Suzimo bowed slightly to Junyu and cupped his hands in thanks. Take a seat. Junyu did not respond. Instead, she pointed to a praying mat on the ground and invited Suzimo to take a seat. Then, she knelt on the praying mat opposite him. Suzimo hesitated for a moment before arriving in front of Junyu. The 2 of them faced each other, the distance between them less than 2 arms. Just as Suzimo sat down, Junyu opened her mouth and said, you don't have to thank me for what happened today, but I should apologize to you. Junyu saved his life, yet she still had to apologize to him? Suzimo was so shocked that he almost jumped up from the praying mat. He carefully looked into Junyu's eyes and made sure that she was not joking. Then he smiled bitterly and asked, fellow Taoist Junyu, this. Where did this come from? We don't know each other before this, right? Indeed, we don't know each other. Junyu said, I came here because someone asked me to. Is it Immortal King Ling Long from the Green Firmament Celestial Realm? Suzimo asked tentatively. Junyu nodded. Suzimo had already guessed this possibility when Junyu used the 9 palace subtle steps earlier. He was only certain when Junyu admitted it herself. Fairy Ling Long had spent a lot of time with the human emperor, so she should know about the existence of Wu Dao's true body. Naturally, she could also guess that Araki Takashi, who had killed many people in the Jade Firmament Celestial Realm, was Wu Dao's true body. That was why Fairy Ling Long had asked the Divine Firmament Celestial Realm's chess deity, Junyu, to come and save him. However, Su Zimo did not know the relationship between Fairy Ling Long and chess deity Junyu, nor did he know how the two of them met. Junyu pondered for a moment and said, "Immortal King Ling Long and I have known each other for a long time. Initially, I went to the Azure Firmament Celestial Realm to challenge Lin Lei. That was how I got to know Immortal King Ling Long. Later, I heard that Immortal King Ling Long was also good at chess, so I stayed in the Azure Firmament Celestial Realm to practice chess with her." At this point, Junyu paused for a moment. Su Zimo thought to himself, "Rumor has it that chess deity Junyu likes to fight and is obsessed with chess. Just as I expected. I got to know Lin Lei and Fairy Ling Long because they challenged them and practiced chess." Junyu continued, "I am obsessed with chess, and before I met Immortal King Ling Long, I had never been defeated." Su Zimo raised his eyebrows slightly. In other words, chess deity Junyu was no match for Fairy Ling Long in terms of chess skills. Chess had nothing to do with the cultivation of the two sides. It was completely based on the understanding of chess, comprehension, and the ability to control the overall situation. Therefore, Fairy Ling Long's victory over Junyu was not considered bullying her. "In your chess matches with Immortal King Ling Long, have you won more than you have lost?" Su Zimo asked. Junyu said, "I have never won." Su Zimo was speechless. Junyu said, "In terms of understanding and comprehension of chess, I am about the same as Immortal King Ling Long. However, Immortal King Ling Long is far superior to me in terms of prediction and control of the situation." Hearing this, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat, and a look of realization flashed across his eyes. Fairy Ling Long's Dao techniques were indeed very useful in chess matches. She could gain the upper hand in every situation. Immortal King Ling Long is both a teacher and a friend to me. Junyu sighed softly and said, "Originally, I wanted to be her disciple, but Immortal King Ling Long was worried that I would be implicated due to the internal and external troubles of the Warring States period, so she did not take me in. However, every time I played chess with Immortal King Ling Long, I learned a lot. 1,000 years ago, Immortal King Ling Long suddenly called me over and asked me to take care of you if you encounter any danger in the Divine Firmament Immortal Realm." Hearing this, Su Zimo finally understood the cause and effect of this matter. 1,000 years ago, Wu Dao's main body had saved Lin Lei and Lin Luo. Fairy Ling Long was grateful, so she summoned chess deity Junyu over and asked her to do this. It was not that Fairy Ling Long had predicted that he would encounter danger at the Divine Firmament Immortal Convention 1,000 years later. "Actually, I should have arrived at the Divine Firmament Immortal Convention earlier," Junyu said. "However, before we parted last time, Immortal King Ling Long gave me 9 different Go puzzles and asked me to go back and decipher them. Immortal King Ling Long said that some of her Dao techniques are in these 9 Go puzzles. For 1,000 years, I have been deciphering these 9 exquisite Go puzzles and gained something. Previously, in the Divine Firmament Great Hall, the 9 palace subtle steps that I used to escape the encirclement of Mengyao and the others was hidden in the 9 exquisite Go puzzles." "I see." Su Zimo was enlightened. No wonder Junyu could use the 9 palace subtle steps. It turned out that Immortal King Ling Long was using the chess pieces to impart her Dao. From this, it could be seen how much Immortal King Ling Long liked and valued Junyu. Junyu said apologetically, "I was lost in deciphering the Go puzzles and forgot about the Divine Firmament Immortal Convention. That's why I came late and almost made a big mistake." "Fellow Daoist, you don't have to do that. No matter what, I was only able to survive because you arrived in time." Su Zimo thanked her again. Chapter 2567. Let's play a game of Go. Junyu suddenly said. "Ah." Su Zimo felt stunned for a moment. Then he shook his head and said, "I don't know how to play Go, nor have I played it with anyone before." Xiaoqin had only come into contact with Go when he was a student. However, he was not interested in it and did not study it. After he started cultivating, he did not spend any time on it. "Do you know the rules?" Junyu asked again. "I only know a little," Su Zimo answered. He felt somewhat confused, not knowing why Junyu suddenly wanted to play Go with him. Su Zimo did not know that Junyu felt even more confused. Back then, after Fairy Linglong gave her the 9 Go puzzles, she said that if there was a chance, she could show the 9 exquisite Go puzzles to Su Zimo. Fairy Linglong also said that if there was anything she did not understand, the two of them could discuss it. Junyu originally thought that since Fairy Linglong said that, Su Zimo would definitely be proficient in the Go Dao. Unexpectedly, Su Zimo only knew a little about the Go Dao. He had never played it before. That's somewhat strange. Junyu frowned slightly. No matter what, since it was Fairy Linglong's request, she did not think too much about it and said, "I'll teach you." Since she wanted to show the exquisite Go puzzles to Su Zimo, she had to at least teach him the rules of Go. It was not difficult to learn the basics of Go. Junyu casually explained a few things, and with Su Zimo's talent, he grasped it in less than 10 minutes. Junyu placed the star chessboard behind her between the two. Then she waved her sleeves, and white Go stones fell from the Go board. The black and white Go stones each occupied half of the board, forming a Go puzzle. This is the first game of the exquisite Go puzzle. You are the black Go stone. How are you going to solve the game? Junyu originally planned to play a few games with Su Zimo. However, when she saw that he only knew a little about Go, she lost interest. After she explained the rules to Su Zimo, she directly laid out the exquisite Go puzzle for Su Zimo to study and figure it out. Regardless of whether or not Su Zimo could decipher it, she had to complete Fairy Linglong's task. Su Zimo looked at the chessboard in front of him and fell into deep thought. Rather than saying that this was the end game, it would be better to say that this was a checkmate. The black pieces that he was holding were being suppressed everywhere on the chessboard. They were being chased and intercepted by the white pieces. The cycle went on and on. He was already in a dead end with no chance of survival. Su Zimo pinched the black piece between his fingers and stared at the star chessboard for a long time, but he didn't place his piece. Because no matter how he calculated, he couldn't find a way to break it. No matter where the black piece landed, it was a dead end. The art of chess was ever-changing and unpredictable. Every move would lead to countless subsequent changes. This required an extremely high level of mental strength. An hour passed, and he sat there motionlessly. The more he calculated, the more chaotic his mind became. His chest was stuffy, his mind was vexed, and his head was splitting. Su Zimo quickly closed his eyes and gradually calmed his mind, panting slightly. When Junyu saw this scene, she was not surprised at all and only smiled faintly. The art of chess was easy to learn but difficult to master. The game of chess contained many profound Taoist techniques. Origin gave birth to yin and yang gave birth to the 4 divisions, and the 4 divisions gave birth to the 8 trigrams. The heavens were round and the earth was round. The 360 heavenly cycles and everything else could be reflected in this 2 feet square chessboard. The chessboard was the heavens, and the universe. It was all-encompassing and could tolerate anything. Su Zimo had just learned how to play chess. How could he decipher such an intricate, exquisite chessboard? The 9 exquisite chess games became more and more complicated as they progressed. She had cultivated the art of chess for many years, and the only person she had lost to was Fairy Linglong. Even with her understanding of the art of chess, she took an entire day to decipher the first exquisite chessboard back then. Right then, Su Zimo's breathing calmed down. However, he did not open his eyes. Holding the black piece between 2 fingers, he suddenly placed it on a spot on the star chessboard. Thereafter, Su Zimo opened his eyes and looked at the exquisite chessboard before him. He heaved a sigh of relief and smiled. Opposite him, Junyu could not help but exclaim softly in shock when she saw how Su Zimo placed his piece. That was because that move was the key to decipher the first exquisite chessboard. That move seemed to have killed a portion of his black pieces. However, a large amount of life force was opened up after that move. It was a strange move that sought survival in the midst of death. How is that possible? Junyu frowned slightly and instinctively thought that Su Zimo had merely stumbled upon it by accident. Junyu did not say anything else and continued playing with a white piece. However, after Su Zimo committed suicide with his black pieces, the situation changed instead. The heavens were vast and the earth was vast. Fishes could leap and birds could soar freely. He was no longer restrained and killed for a chance of survival. Given Su Zimo's talent, it did not take long for him to kill his way out of the encirclement and form a confrontation with the white pieces, deciphering the exquisite chessboard perfectly. Junyu knew that there was no point in continuing the game and retracted her black and white pieces. Junyu looked at Su Zimo in surprise and said, "Fellow Taoist Su, you have great talent and comprehension in the Tao of chess. It's truly rare." Even though that was the case, she was still extremely suspicious of Su Zimo in her heart. She thought that Su Zimo's move earlier on was just a fluke. She would have to spend an entire day to decipher the game. How was that possible for a beginner like Su Zimo to take more than an hour? In reality, under normal circumstances, Su Zimo would not be able to decipher the exquisite chessboard even if he racked his brains and exhausted his mind. However, the moment he closed his eyes and calmed his mind, a thought flashed through his mind and a black-robed woman appeared. She wielded a horsetail whisk and used a strange footwork. That black-robed woman was the phantom that Wu Dao's main body saw during his 10th tribulation. At that moment, a strange feeling arose in Su Zimo's heart. It was as though the black-robed woman was placed on a starry chessboard and transformed into a black piece in his hands. She was trapped in a dead end and was being hunted down from all directions. However, the black-robed woman was not flustered and took a shocking step forward, breaking out of the situation instantly. Pursuing that feeling, Su Zimo placed his black piece. The spot where he placed his piece was where the black-robed woman took her first step. Thereafter, Su Zimo opened his eyes and looked over. The situation of the exquisite chessboard had already changed and the black pieces were fighting for a chance of survival. Su Zimo was excited as he recalled the exquisite chessboard earlier on and compared it to the footwork of the black-robed woman. Gradually, a hint of enlightenment flashed through his mind as though he had gained something. In reality, the footwork of the black-robed woman was the 9 palaces' subtle steps. However, Su Zimo had only seen the form and process of the black-robed woman executing the footwork. It was almost impossible for him to truly comprehend it. But now, Fairy Ling Long had integrated the 9 palaces' subtle steps into the exquisite chessboard. Although it seemed like she was deciphering the chessboard, she was actually making use of the chessboard to impart Tao techniques. Chapter 2568. Junyu was in disbelief as she waved her sleeves and scattered more than 100 pieces on the star chessboard, setting up a second nimble chess game. All these years, she had been focused entirely on deciphering nimble chess games and she had long memorized all 9 of them. Su Zimo had just deciphered a nimble chess game and was in high spirits. When he saw Junyu set up a second game, he did not hesitate and immediately observed the game. Although the situation of the black pieces in the second nimble chess game was completely different from the previous game, it was still a deadlock. Su Zimo tried to decipher it himself first. Although he had some ideas after 2 hours, he was still unable to confirm it and did not place his piece. Closing his eyes once more, he imagined himself as the black piece in the nimble chess game and how he should escape from such an encirclement. The figure of the black-robed woman appeared in his mind once more. As he looked at the footwork of the black-robed woman, Su Zimo verified it repeatedly with the nimble chess game. A moment later, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat and he finally placed his piece. The black piece landed firmly on a spot on the star chessboard. Junyu raised her brow slightly. That was the key to deciphering the second nimble chess game. Without batting an eyelid, Junyu placed her white piece and played against Su Zimo. The second nimble chess game was much more complicated than the first. He had only taken the first step and was unable to escape the deadlock. During this period of time, there were still many traps and tribulations waiting for Su Zimo. Before long, Su Zimo placed his second piece. This time round, Junyu's heart skipped a beat as she looked deeply at Su Zimo. If the first time was an accident and Su Zimo's second time was a coincidence, the third time was definitely not a fluke. "Fellow Taoist Su, you're hiding your strength, right?" Junyu asked with a fake smile. At that moment, Su Zimo's mind was completely immersed in the nimble chess game, verifying the footwork of the black-robed woman and comprehending the Tao techniques of the game. As such, he turned a deaf ear to Junyu's words. The two continued to play dozens of moves. Junyu played white and gradually gained the upper hand. However, Junyu knew in her heart that Su Zimo had already broken the second nimble chess game with his two exquisite moves. Back then, she had spent an entire 7 days to solve the second nimble chess game. Without another word, Junyu scattered the black and white chess pieces again, setting up the third nimble chess game. Su Zimo took a deep breath and immersed himself in it again. Yunju and Emo-ching stood guard outside the door. In the blink of an eye, a day and a night had passed. Yunju squatted on the stone steps with an ancient book in her hands. She seemed to be concentrating on the book. However, the truth was that she had already flipped open the ancient book and stayed on this page for several hours. There were many books in Yunju's storage bag. She had originally planned to read some books here. After all, 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. However, it didn't take long before she couldn't take it anymore. It wasn't that the book wasn't good, it was just that his heart wasn't calm. Although her gaze was fixed on the words of the ancient book, her thoughts had long slipped into the room and she was letting her imagination run wild. Realizing her state, Yunju sighed and put away the ancient book in her hands, looking not far away. There was a woman standing quietly at the side. She was gentle and elegant, holding a brush in her hands as she drew the flowers, trees, mountains and rivers in the courtyard on a piece of paper. The woman was one with the mountains and rivers in the courtyard. Her existence was like the most beautiful painting in the world. Yunju smiled gently. For the simple-minded Emo-ching, it wouldn't be a problem for her to draw here for 3 years or even 30 years, let alone 3 days and 3 nights. Yunju stood up and came to Emo-ching's side, waving her hand gently. "Sister Yunju, what's wrong?" Emo-ching turned around and asked. Yunju pointed in the direction of Junyu's room. "The two of them have been in there for a long time without coming out. There's no movement either." Emo-ching nodded. "It's indeed a little strange." Yunju said mysteriously, "Do you want to go in and take a look at what the two of them are doing? Isn't it a little abrupt?" Emo-ching frowned slightly with a hesitant expression. "It's nothing," Yunju said. "We're just visiting, not barging in." "All right." Emo-ching nodded in agreement. Yunju and Emo-ching arrived in front of Junyu's room. Yunju stepped forward and said loudly, I'm here with Emo-ching to visit fellow Taoist Junyu. Please open the door." After a while, there was no response from the room. Yunju pondered and said, "There's a restriction in this room that isolates spirit consciousness and sound. I'll try knocking on the door." As she said that, Yunju stepped forward and knocked on the door gently. After a few knocks, a gap appeared on the door. The door was not locked. Yunju pushed open the door gently and saw Su Zimo and Junyu kneeling on futons in the room with a game of Go between them. The two of them were playing an intense game of Go. Yunju opened her mouth slightly and was dumbfounded. She had imagined countless scenes, but this was the only one she had not imagined. Emo-ching was also surprised when she saw this scene. "Come in and close the door." Junyu's voice sounded. Yunju and Emo-ching entered the room and turned to close the door. Su Zimo seemed to be immersed in the game of Go and did not even notice the arrival of Yunju and Emo-ching. "The two of you have been playing Go for an entire day and night?" Yunju asked in disbelief. "Yes." Junyu nodded and looked at Su Zimo with a conflicted expression. In a single day and night, this beginner of Go before her managed to crack 6 exquisite Go games in a row. This was completely beyond her imagination. Back then, she took a day to crack the first exquisite Go game. She took 7 days to crack the second game. She took an entire month to crack the third game. She took an entire 100 years to crack the 6th game. During that 100 years, she did not cultivate at all and spent all her time and effort on cracking the exquisite Go games. That torment was still fresh in her memories. She spent more than 100 years to crack the first 6 exquisite Go games. However, this disciple of the academy before her only took a single day and night. Right now, Su Zimo was already attempting to crack the 7th exquisite Go game. She took an even longer time to crack the 7th exquisite Go game, close to 500 years. Junyu did not dare to guess how long Su Zimo would take to crack the 7th exquisite Go game. However, at this moment, she finally understood why Fairy Ling Long wanted the two of them to communicate. Indeed, this beginner of Go before her was qualified to communicate with her. In reality, the reason why Fairy Ling Long could make that judgment was because Lin Luo told her that Su Zimo seemed to have unintentionally released the 9 palace subtle steps once. Fairy Ling Long was greatly surprised by this. She guessed that Su Zimo might have come into contact with the 9 palace subtle steps before but did not truly master it. That was the reason why Fairy Ling Long hid the 9 palace subtle steps in the 9 exquisite Go games. She wanted to impart the Tao through Go games to repay Araki Takashi for saving Lin Lei and his sister. Chapter 2569. As expected of a chess immortal. Yunju chuckled. Junyu was obsessed with the Tao of chess and actually dragged Su Zimo to play chess for an entire day and night in her room. That was something that ordinary people would not be able to do. Emo Qing looked at the game on the star chessboard and asked curiously, "Junior brother Su is also proficient in the Tao of chess and can play against you?" Junyu had a conflicted expression. Fellow Taoist Su's talent in the Tao of chess is truly, it's a long story. In terms of chess skills, Su Zimo was far inferior to her in terms of layouts, formations, opportunities, mid-game, and combat. After all, Su Zimo had only just grasped the rules of chess and could only be considered as a beginner. However, in the game, Su Zimo's talent, comprehension, mentality, execution, spirit, and will were on par with hers. In fact, he might even be superior to her in certain aspects. Furthermore, Su Zimo would often come up with astounding ideas to find a way to survive in the midst of death and break through the chessboard. Yunju was surprised as well. She had dabbled in the Tao of chess and was not weak. However, she lost to Junyu in multiple games back then. How could Su Zimo receive such a high evaluation from Junyu in the Tao of chess? This game of chess looks a little. Junyu merely swept her gaze across the star chessboard and frowned when she caught sight of the chess pieces on it. She wanted to say something but stopped. Given her chess skills, there was no way she could escape alive if she had a black piece. Or rather, this game of chess was a dead end. Junyu did not avoid Yunju and Emo Qing. "I've prepared 9 endgames and fellow Taoist Su has already solved 6 of them. Right now, the both of you are looking at the 7th. The nimble chess game was extremely profound and unpredictable. Even if Junyu and Emo Qing were to watch from the side, they would not be able to tell anything." Emo Qing was not interested in chess and merely found a cushion not far away from Su Zimo to sit cross-legged. Yunju stood at the side and stared at the endgame, trying to find a way to solve it. However, half a day had passed, and Su Zimo still had not placed a piece. Yunju was clueless as well. Not only that, but she had also stared at the nimble chess game for half a day, which consumed a lot of her mental energy. It was even more tiring than fighting for half a day. Yunju shook her head slightly. She closed her eyes and gradually calmed herself down. "Fellow Taoist, how long did you take to solve this Go puzzle?" After resting for a while, Yunju opened her eyes and asked Junyu. Since Junyu laid out this endgame, she definitely had a way to resolve it. "Nearly 500 years. Junyu didn't hide anything and said a number. Yunju was speechless. Even with Junyu's chess skills and understanding of chess, she would still need 500 years to solve this game. She didn't intend to continue trying. With her chess skills, she might not be able to solve this game even after 5,000 or 50,000 years. Yunju's heart skipped a beat as she suddenly asked, "Fellow Taoist, how long did you take to clear the 6th round?" Junyu was silent for a while before saying, "More than 100 years." The corners of Yunju's mouth curled up slightly. A trace of a smile flashed across her eyes, but she did not pursue the matter. Junyu had just said that Su Zimo cleared 6 games in a day and a night. This meant that Su Zimo took less than a day and a night to solve the 6th game. At least in this aspect, Junyu had already lost to Su Zimo. When Yunju discovered this matter, she was extremely interested. However, she did not expose this matter as a form of consideration for Junyu's reputation. Yunju had a headache looking at the seventh exquisite chess game. She did not continue trying to solve it. Instead, she gave up and casually found a futon to sit on. Yunju read a lot of books. Her horizons were broad and she was carefree. In her opinion, there were many things in this world that could not be achieved even if she exhausted her entire life. If that was the case, why should she force herself and make things difficult for herself? Giving up at the right time was also a form of wisdom. There were some things that others might be able to do, but so what? In this world, everyone was different. Junyu was indeed better than her in chess. However, in terms of her understanding of the major realms, the history of the upper realm, and the past of many powerhouses, she was far from being a chess immortal. Su Zimo closed his eyes and kept recalling the scene of the woman in black releasing the 9 palace subtle steps. He compared it with the 7th exquisite chess game in front of him. He was able to solve the first 6 exquisite chess games in a day and a night because of this method. However, the further he went, the more complicated the exquisite chess games became. It was filled with countless possibilities. The number of steps that needed to be calculated and the control of the situation had far exceeded Su Zimo's imagination. After deducing for half a day, not only was he unable to solve the game, his mind was already in chaos. Su Zimo pondered for a moment. Suddenly, he took out a seed from his storage bag and held it in his palm. The moment he held the seed, his mind quickly regained clarity. The complicated clues were gradually sorted out. This seed was the Bodhi seed that he had snatched in the Jade Heaven Immortal region. The Bodhi seed was very beneficial to cultivation. Increasing one's cultivation speed was secondary. The most important thing was that holding the Bodhi seed could greatly increase a cultivator's comprehension. It could always maintain a clear mind and sharp mind. The Bodhi seed originated from the Bodhi tree, one of the 3 sacred trees of Buddhism. Legend has it that at the beginning of the upper realm, Buddha meditated under the Bodhi tree for 7 days and 7 nights. He defeated the temptation of countless evil spirits. At dawn, he achieved enlightenment and became Buddha. The 3 sacred trees of Buddhism each had their own origins and were all related to Buddha. Legend has it that Buddha was born under the Ashoka tree, attained enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, and attained nirvana under the Sara tree. Because of that, these 3 trees were passed down by Buddha and eventually became the 3 sacred trees that protected the pure land of bliss. Su Zimo held the Bodhi seed and recalled the process of the woman in black releasing the 9 palace subtle steps. He did not miss a single detail and verified it. Unknowingly, the sun had set and night had fallen. Su Zimo held the Bodhi seed in one hand and the black chess piece in the other. His expression was focused and he maintained this posture without moving. Finally, at the break of dawn, Su Zimo placed the black chess piece with a loud thud. He's finally done it. Yunju was invigorated and looked over hurriedly. When she saw that move, Junyu's eyes lit up. That move was the key to deciphering the 7th exquisite chess game. However, if he wanted to decipher the entire exquisite chess game, that was only the first move and it was far from enough. After that, Su Zimo had to make at least 6 more moves. Every single move must not be wrong for him to be able to decipher the game. Junyu did not say anything and placed the white chess piece. Su Zimo's second move was extremely fast and he did not think at all, as though he had everything planned out. Junyu was expressionless. Su Zimo's second move was not wrong either. She continued to place her piece. Su Zimo responded swiftly and placed his third piece. In the span of a few breaths, the 2 of them placed 7 pieces in succession. Junyu watched from the side in a daze and even felt as though she could not keep up with their thoughts. However, by the time both of them were done placing their pieces, she looked at the game again and realized that the black pieces had already broken free from the encirclement of the white pieces. From now on, the world was vast and there was much to be done. End of chapter. Chapter 2570. Junyu put away the chess pieces on the chessboard and looked at Su Zimo opposite her. Retracting her initial contempt, she said in a deep voice, "There are still 2 chess games left. I've studied the 8th game for more than 500 years, but I'm still clueless. I hope that you won't be stingy with your guidance, fellow Taoist Su. You flatter me. Su Zimo waved it off hurriedly. He knew his own capabilities. If he had not witnessed the black-robed woman's footwork and the help of the Bodhi seed, there was no way he could have solved the 7 exquisite chess games. However, in the past 2 days and nights, Su Zimo had gained a lot and had already comprehended the essence of the 9 palaces' subtle steps. Junyu waved her sleeves and scattered more than 200 chess pieces on the star chessboard. The game was nearing its end. However, the situation on the chessboard was even more complicated and profound than the 7th game. Holding the Bodhi seed, Su Zimo recalled the black-robed woman's footwork and compared them. However, he could not find a solution. On the 3rd day, he still had no clue until nightfall. This game is way too complicated. It's already beyond my understanding. Su Zimo frowned slightly and shook his head. Junyu sighed softly as well. I've been deducing this game for more than 500 years. However, I can't deduce it after a few moves. As she said that, Junyu laid out her chess pieces and shared some ideas to solve it with Su Zimo. However, after 2 hours, the two of them still had no results from the 8th game. Let me think about it, Su Zimo said and closed his eyes. A moment later he opened his eyes once more. His pupils that were initially clear transformed and 2 strange purple flames appeared. Spirit potency art, see what I see. Although Wu Dao's true body was in the Avicii hell, he made use of the power of the spirit potency art to see the 8th game through the eyes of Qinglian's true body. Wu Dao's original body was in seclusion, and Su Zimo originally did not intend to disturb him. However, Su Zimo had second thoughts. The nimble chess game was extremely mysterious. Perhaps it could give Wu Dao some inspiration and help him perfect Wu Dao. The changes in Su Zimo's body were not obvious. If one didn't pay attention, almost no one would notice the strangeness in his eyes. Junyu's senses were sharp and she seemed to have sensed something. She raised her head to look at Su Zimo and frowned slightly. Su Zimo's cultivation was still that of a rank 8 heavenly immortal. Other than the strange look in his eyes, there seemed to be no change to his body. But in Junyu's heart, there was an indescribable feeling. Su Zimo seemed to have changed. No idea why, Junyu knelt in front of Su Zimo and actually felt a pressure that she had never felt before. This kind of pressure even made her a little restless. How could this be? Junyu shook her head in confusion. Normally speaking, even if she was facing an immortal king, she wouldn't feel this way. Yunju, who was beside her, also noticed the changes in Su Zimo's eyes. She knew the existence of Wu Dao's original body, although she didn't know what had happened to Su Zimo's body for the time being. But she guessed that the person in front of her had probably been replaced by Araki Takashi from the demon domain. Mo Qing was quietly drawing at the side and didn't notice the movements here. Naturally, she didn't notice the changes in Su Zimo's body. 2 balls of purple flames burned in Su Zimo's eyes. He merged all the Dao techniques and charm on the nimble chess game into Wu Dao's furnace and refined it. In order to perfect Wu Dao, the original body had browsed through countless cultivation techniques and secret techniques, and summarized countless Dao techniques and true essence. Wu Dao's original body's eyesight and experience far surpassed Qinglian's original body, who was still in the heavenly origin realm. In the eyes of Wu Dao's original body, this star chessboard was another world. The chessboard had 19 rows and was square. In fact, it was formed by the continuous expansion of the 9 squares. And at this moment, under the gaze of Wu Dao's original body, the black-robed woman seemed to have turned into a chess piece, walking in the nimble chess game. Every step of the black-robed woman was unexpected, but if one observed carefully, they would be able to see that every step of the black-robed woman's had a deep meaning. At the end, the black-robed woman actually took a step in the void on the side of the chessboard. This step seemed useless, but it made Su Zimo's body tremble. I see. Su Zimo muttered softly. Fellow Taoist Su, have you found a way to break it? Junyu frowned and asked in disbelief. Su Zimo didn't answer and placed a black piece. Junyu pondered for a moment and played with a white piece, fighting on the star chessboard. Towards the end, Junyu played slower and slower. Often she would have to think for a long time with every move. However, Su Zimo's moves were getting faster and faster. Finally, at daybreak, the 8th nimble chess game ended and was perfectly resolved by Su Zimo. Please guide me, fellow Taoist. Junyu did not dare to delay and stood up first. She cupped her fists and bowed before asking sincerely. This game is indeed complicated and the concept is even more transcendent. Su Zimo said calmly, the 8th game describes the power of space. The 9 palaces' subtle steps can not only be on a single level, but also in all directions. In this way, it can be considered as opening up a new path and creating a path of survival. At that moment, although Su Zimo was the one sitting opposite Junyu, in reality, Wu Dao's original body had yet to leave. Therefore, there was a hint of coldness when he spoke. A look of realization flashed through Junyu's eyes as she thought to herself, so the way to break the game is in space. No wonder I have no clue. In fact, even if they comprehended this level of the 9 palaces' subtle steps, Junyu and Su Zimo would not be able to release it given their cultivation realm. This level of the 9 palaces' subtle steps required a cultivator to open a grotto heaven and reach the immortal king realm. What about the 9th game? Su Zimo asked. Junyu did not hesitate and set up the 9th game. Purple flames burned in Su Zimo's eyes as he deduced the 9th game with Wu Dao's original body. Right then, Mo Qing heard Su Zimo speak from the side and felt that his tone was a little strange. She subconsciously turned back to take a look. She happened to see the 2 balls of purple flames in Su Zimo's eyes. Mo Qing opened her mouth slightly and was stunned on the spot. For some reason, when she saw the burning flames in Su Zimo's eyes, a man in a purple robe and a silver mask suddenly appeared in her mind. Back in Avicii, the same purple flames had appeared in Araki Takashi's eyes. Their eyes were simply too similar. Mo Qing was proficient in painting and observed things in detail. Her eyesight was better than Yunju and Junyu's. She had even personally drawn a portrait of Araki Takashi. As Araki Takashi was wearing a silver mask, Mo Qing had spent the most effort on Araki Takashi's eyes in that portrait. It could be said that Araki Takashi's eyes had been imprinted in her mind. Therefore, when she saw Su Zimo's eyes, Mo Qing immediately thought of Araki Takashi from the demon domain. Both of them should have mastered the same ocular technique, right? Mo Qing was a little confused as she thought to herself. At this moment, hurried footsteps came from outside the door as if someone was about to barge in. Chapter 2571. Yun Ting's face was livid as he rushed to Junyu's room in a huff. Just as he was about to barge in, he thought of something and hesitated. For the past 3 days, all sorts of rumors about Su Zimo and the 4 fairies spread. Furthermore, they were getting more exaggerated and ridiculous. Initially, Yun Ting scoffed at such rumors and did not think much of them. However, for the past 3 days, many cultivators made it sound so convincing that even he was starting to doubt them. 3 days had passed and Junyu, Yunju, Mo Qing and Su Zimo had yet to appear. Finally, Yun Ting could not sit still any longer and rushed over, ready to ask about it. His sister was a princess of an immortal kingdom after all. How could she do something so ridiculous? My sister must have fallen into Su Zimo's trap. Yun Ting gritted his teeth in hatred and spat, "What a gigolo from the academy." However, even if his sister had lost her mind, what about the chess immortal and painting immortal? The 3 fairies were fooling around with Su Zimo? Hiding in the room for 3 days and 3 nights? Initially, Yun Ting was filled with rage. However, he hesitated when he reached the door. If he rushed in and saw something indescribable, he would definitely not let Su Zimo off. However, what about his sister? After all, such things could not be exposed. Yun Ting paced back and forth in front of the door, unable to make up his mind. However, after thinking about it, he felt that the heaven roll ranking battle was about to begin and he had to inform the people in the room. At that thought, Yun Ting knocked on the door gently. The door was not locked and after a few knocks, it opened slightly. Yun Ting took a deep breath and pushed the door open. There were 4 people in the room, 3 women and 1 man. They were the book immortal Yun Zhu, painting immortal Mo Qing, chess immortal Jun Yu, and Su Zimo. The four of them were gathered together. Yun Zhu, Mo Qing, and Su Zimo were staring at a chessboard while Mo Qing was staring at Su Zimo in a daze. This scene was completely out of Yun Ting's expectations. He was dumbfounded and looked at the scene in disbelief. He froze on the spot and his mind was in a daze, unable to react for a moment. Hearing the commotion at the door, Su Zimo and the three fairies snapped out of their daze. The purple flames in Su Zimo's eyes gradually faded and eventually disappeared. Seeing that Su Zimo's eyes had returned to normal, Mo Qing retracted her gaze and lowered her head, deep in thought. Yun Zhu turned to look at Yun Ting, who was standing at the door, and asked, "Little brother, what are you doing here?" Jun Yu said coolly, 3 days have already passed. Today, the Heaven Proclamation ranking battle officially begins. They should be here to inform us. But he was still worried and couldn't help but ask, "Sister, what are the four of you doing here?" "The two of them are playing chess. Sister Mo Qing and I are watching from the side," Yun Zhu said casually. Yun Ting took a few deep breaths and tried to calm himself down. He asked with difficulty, "The four of you have been in this room for 3 days and 3 nights around a chessboard?" Yun Zhu nodded. "More or less." Yun Ting rolled his eyes. Yun Zhu saw Yun Ting's strange expression and frowned slightly. She asked in return, "What else do you think?" "It's not what I think." Yun Ting pointed at the door and said bitterly, "You have nothing to do here. You don't know how many rumors there are out there." Rumors stop with the wise. Jun Yu's expression was calm and she didn't care. The innocent knows the truth. Mo Qing's tone was indifferent. Because of Ming Yao's slander during the immortal sect selection, there had been many rumors about her over the years. She couldn't be bothered. "Is that so?" Yun Zhu smiled and said, "I'm a little curious about the rumors out there." Yun Zhu's mood was even more relaxed. Yun Ting looked helpless. His gaze turned and fell on Su Zimo, who hadn't said a word. His anger that had just calmed down rose again and he shouted, "Su Zimo!" Su Zimo was reminiscing about the 8 exquisite chess games from before when he was jolted awake by Yun Ting's holler. He looked at the angry Yun Ting and was a little confused. He didn't know why the young prince was angry. "Fellow Taoist Yun Ting, what can I do for you?" Su Zimo asked. Yun Ting wanted to say something but stopped. He wanted to scold Su Zimo, but he suddenly realized that he couldn't say anything. Su Zimo had just played chess with the 3 fairies for 3 days and 3 nights. What was wrong with that? Yun Ting thought for a long time but couldn't think of anything. He could only glare at Su Zimo and curse, "You're worse than a beast." With that said, Yun Ting turned and left. Su Zimo was baffled by Yun Ting's scolding and did not know what was going on. Yun Zhu said, "Who knows what's wrong with him again? Zimo, don't bother. Let's go. The heaven ranking battle is about to begin." Jun Yu said. The 3 fairies stood up and headed to the Divine Firmament main hall with Su Zimo. In the Divine Firmament main hall. In less than 3 days, the ruins caused by the perfected immortal battle had been restored. Tens of millions of cultivators were gathered here. It was densely packed and bustling. Almost all the cultivators of the 4 immortal kingdoms and 3 major immortal sects were present. Only a few people had yet to arrive at the main hall. "The chess immortal, book immortal, and painting immortal aren't here yet? Don't you know?" Another cultivator said, 3 days ago, after the perfected immortal battle ended, the 3 fairies and Su Zimo gathered together. "Is that true?" "It's absolutely true. Someone saw it with their own eyes," that person said excitedly. Furthermore, the 3 fairies and Su Zimo stayed in the same room for 3 days and 3 nights without leaving. Heavens, could it be that Su Zimo and the 3 fairies were in the same room? Many cultivators' eyes lit up. Do you even need to think about it? If you or I were in their shoes, would we be able to sit and do nothing after guarding the 3 fairies for 3 days and 3 nights? Another person said, "To think that the 3 fairies who seem unreachable would be together with a heaven immortal from the academy. What's so good about Su Zimo? He's someone who ascended from the lower world and his cultivation realm can't even compare to him. The three fairies must be blind. A cultivator laughed with a wretched expression. There must be something extraordinary about Su Zimo. 3 days and 3 nights. Flying Immortal Sect. Zither Immortal Mengyao smiled and was secretly delighted when she heard the discussions in the crowd. Out of the 4 fairies, 3 of them were rumored to be involved with someone and were no longer unreachable. Her status would definitely rise again and surpass the other 3 fairies. If that's the case, the only one who can truly be called a fairy among the 4 fairies is probably Zither Immortal Mengyao, a cultivator side. Not necessarily. Another person whispered, "Let me tell you, Zither Immortal Mengyao is the same as the 3 fairies. She's also involved with Su Zimo." There's such a thing? Of course. Otherwise, why would Fairy Mengyao suddenly make things difficult for Su Zimo and cause the 3 fairies to appear one after another? That's right. Since we can't have Su Zimo, we might as well destroy him. Zither Immortal's love turned into hatred. What an ill-fated relationship. When she heard that, Mengyao was so angry that she trembled and her face turned pale. Chapter 2572. What a bunch of nonsense. Mengyao was enraged as she turned around and soared into the air. She looked in the direction of the voice and plucked a few strings in the void. The sound of the zither echoed endlessly, suppressing the discussions of many cultivators before long. Who was the one spouting nonsense earlier on? Mengyao looked at the crowd with a frosty expression and questioned loudly with a cold tone that was filled with killing intent. There were way too many cultivators in the Divine Firmament main hall. There were more than 10 million of them, and it was a dark patch at a glance. Mengyao could only determine the approximate location of the voices but did not know who were the ones who were gossiping. Mengyao was filled with killing intent. Which of the few people who spoke earlier on would dare to step forward to die? Everyone kept quiet out of fear and did not dare to make a sound. Good. Mengyao was so angry that she laughed instead. It's fine if you don't come out. At most, I'll just kill a few more. She would rather kill the wrong person than let them off. Buzz. Mengyao's fingertips moved and the essence chi in the void swiftly formed a zither string beneath her fingers. The zither music sounded once more. This time, the sound of the zither contained an extreme killing intent. The few cultivators could not defend against it and their eyes bulged with bloodshot expressions in shock. Immediately after, the bodies of those cultivators exploded into a blood mist and their essence spirits were destroyed along with their bodies. Some of the surrounding cultivators with powerful cultivation realms were severely injured as well. Buzz. The second zither music sounded. Some of the cultivators who withstood the first zither music were severely injured and could not catch their breaths. The second zither music descended. In the blink of an eye, another dozen or so cultivators died. The expressions of many cultivators changed. Nobody expected that the zither immortal, Mengyao, would go on a killing spree in public and even kill the innocent just because of a few words of gossip. It was clear that some of the cultivators who died earlier on had suffered an undeserved calamity. Many cultivators were enraged but did not dare to voice their anger because of the zither immortal's reputation and combat strength, afraid that they would be killed. What a big temper! Yun Ting arrived at the Divine Firmament main hall and witnessed the scene. He could not help but sneer. To think that the zither immortal would be a bully. Mengyao glared at Yun Ting and said coldly, "This has nothing to do with you. Mind your own business." "What? You still want to attack me?" Yun Ting sneered again, fearless. A cold light flashed in Mengyao's eyes. Yun Ting was of noble status, so she had her reservations. Although she couldn't kill him in front of so many people, she could teach Yun Ting a lesson. "Mengyao, if you want to fight, I'll accompany you." At this moment, another voice sounded. Not far away, the 3 fairies walked side by side and arrived at the Divine Firmament Palace in the blink of an eye. The one who spoke was the book fairy Yunju. When the 3 fairies came closer, everyone realized that there was another person following behind them. It was Su Zimo from the academy. When Meng Yao saw the four of them appear at the same time, she suddenly smiled and said, "I'm afraid that the three of you still don't know about the various rumors about you all these days, right?" "Very exciting," Meng Yao praised, clapping her hands and smiling. Jun Yu's expression was calm as she said, "Rumors stop with the wise." "I'm innocent," Mo Qing said calmly. The two of them still said the same thing, and still looked like they didn't care at all. Although the two fairies were so calm, many cultivators began to mutter in their hearts and began to doubt the rumors about the three fairies. In fact, the two fairies did not even bother to argue against the rumors. Tiny Book House. However, Meng Yao seemed to be extremely agitated and was even willing to kill someone. It was obvious who was superior between the two of them. Yun Zhu said with a fake smile, "Since they're just rumors, why bother?" "Fellow Taoist Meng Yao, are you so nervous because the rumors about you are true?" "Of course they're false," Meng Yao replied hurriedly. Yun Zhu's question was extremely powerful and struck Meng Yao's Achilles heel instantly. "I've long felt that the matter between the three fairies and Su Zimo is way too ridiculous. It's impossible." "That's right. I didn't believe it when it was first spread. The three fairies are of noble status. Why would they take a liking to an inner sect disciple of the academy?" Meng Yao's reaction is so big. Do you think it's true between her and Su Zimo? After all, Meng Yao's younger brother, Duke Yuanzhua, died at the hands of Su Zimo. The two of them have a blood feud. Meng Yao realized that she can't be with Su Zimo in this life and hated him out of love. It's also very possible. The crowd began to whisper again. Many cultivators looked at Meng Yao with a trace of pity in their eyes. Meng Yao was so angry that her lungs were about to explode when she sensed the gazes around her and heard the discussions in the crowd. She wished she could kill all of them. At this moment, immortal King Qingyang of the Divine Firmament Palace appeared again with a group of Divine Firmament Palace cultivators and descended above the main hall. "Everyone is here. Very good." Immortal King Qingyang nodded slightly and said, "I won't introduce the rules. Everyone knows what to do. Now, I announce that the Heaven List ranking battle officially begins." As soon as he finished speaking, Immortal King Qingyang waved his sleeves and stirred up a wave of heaven and earth essence qi. In the middle of the Divine Firmament main hall, 10 huge rocks suddenly rose up and became the battlefield of the Heaven List ranking battle. At that time, 10 ranking battles could be held at the same time. Boom! On the huge rock in the middle, a figure fell from the sky and landed with a loud bang, stirring up layers of dust. This person slowly stood up, and his aura kept rising. It was Duke Yun Ting. Yun Ting could not wait any longer and had been waiting for this moment. "Su Zimo, come on up," Yun Ting said loudly. "To you and me, the rules of the ranking battle are just for show. Among the Divine Firmament Celestials, only you are worthy of being my opponent." In Yun Ting's heart he added another sentence. "Su Zimo, I'm going to beat you up and teach you an unforgettable lesson so that you can stay away from my sister in the future." The two of them had already agreed to a battle. Without hesitation, Su Zimo arrived on the gigantic stone battlefield in a flash. In fact, their actions were tantamount to breaking the rules of the Heaven List ranking battle. However, Immortal King Qingyang did not say anything, nor did he intend to stop them. Zhong Feiyu and Qin Gu also did not express their opinions immediately. Both of them had their own plans in mind. Su Zimo and Yun Ting were fighting fiercely, and they would just watch from the sidelines. When two tigers fought, one of them would be injured. No matter who was injured, it would be beneficial to them. It would be best if Su Zimo and Yun Ting were both injured. Only then would they have a chance to win and compete for the top spot on the Heaven List. Who do you think will win? Jun Yu glanced sideways at Yun Zhu beside her and suddenly asked. "I don't know." Yun Zhu shook her head slightly and looked at the two people on the huge rock battlefield. She sighed softly. Between the two of them, it didn't matter to her who won or lost. She only hoped that the two of them would be safe and not fight to the death. However, she did not say this to Yun Ting or Su Zimo. This was because when the battle reached its peak, it was difficult for both sides to control their strength. No matter who she asked to be merciful, it would be unfair to the other. Chapter 2573. Bring it on. Yunting roared. Lightning flashed in his eyes, and his voice rumbled like thunder. It was filled with endless majesty. Not only was Yunting proficient in Sword Dao, but he was also extremely accomplished in Thunder Dao. The surrounding heaven and earth Yuan Qi surged wildly into Yunting's body. His aura was rising rapidly. No matter what, Yunting was a Tier 9 heavenly immortal, a realm above Su Zimo. Su Zimo did not dare to underestimate his opponent and did not hold back either. He released his innate ability, 6 Tusks Divine Power. 6 sharp ivory tusks grew rapidly from his back. His body was filled with the power of the divine power. His physical body, primordial spirit, bloodline and other powers surged. Although Su Zimo was a Tier 8 heavenly immortal, he was no weaker than Yunting in terms of strength. Fight! The two of them attacked at almost the same time. Comet strikes the moon. Sun-piercing rainbow. Yunting relied on his strong resentment to release 2 peerless divine powers of Sword Dao in the blink of an eye. A streak of fiery light and a streak of white light split in different directions and pierced toward Su Zimo. They were so sharp that they seemed to be able to pierce through everything in the world. These 2 divine powers of Sword Dao were extremely lethal. With Yunting's understanding of Sword Dao, the power of these 2 divine powers was multiplied. Lightning Prison. Yunting's 3rd Supreme Divine ability descended as soon as the 2 Supreme Divine abilities were unleashed. Dark clouds covered the sky above the giant rock battlefield, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. A thick bolt of lightning descended from the sky and circled Su Zimo, forming a huge lightning prison that tried to trap him within. Su Zimo's reaction was even faster. At the same time that he released the divine power of 6 fangs, he also summoned ethereal wings, zephyr thunder wings and rock wings. The 3 different wings stacked together and Su Zimo's speed increased exponentially. He turned into a streak of golden light and disappeared on the spot. With a rumble, the 9 heavens divine lightning struck. Su Zimo was no longer in the lightning prison. However, the 2 sword techniques didn't disappear because of this. Yunting had already locked onto Su Zimo's aura. Although Su Zimo's movement technique speed was astonishing, within the limited range of the giant rock battlefield, he couldn't display the greatest effect. The fiery light and the white rainbow in the air followed Su Zimo's trail and turned around, chasing after him at an even faster speed. Spirit Turtle Shield. Su Zimo no longer retreated. He channeled his essence spirit and released another innate divine power. Yunting's 2 sword arts had to be dealt with. Otherwise, it would be like gangrene attached to the bone, following him like a shadow and difficult to remove. It would pose a great threat to his future operations. Su Zimo had gained a new understanding of the Spirit Turtle Shield after practicing the secret technique of the health-suppressing cauldron. The defensive power of that innate divine power had already surpassed its original limits. Su Zimo had cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness before. However, as his cultivation realm increased continuously and he cultivated a few taboo secret manuals over the years, he had his own understanding and insights towards Dao techniques as well. He was already gradually surpassing the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. The power of divine powers converged continuously, forming a gigantic turtle shell that blocked in front of Su Zimo. The back of the tortoise shell was covered with mysterious and complicated patterns that glowed brightly. Not only that, there was a water screen that was extremely heavy on the turtle shell. It seemed to be flowing continuously with a dark glow. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The fiery light formed by Comet striking moon was the first to descend, colliding against the spirit turtle shield with a strange sound. The power of water and fire collided and green smoke billowed. Clang. At the same time, the white rainbow descended and pierced through the green smoke, piercing the turtle shell. Crack, crack, crack. Su Zimo shuddered and he heard cracking sounds. The spirit turtle shield that was even stronger than his Dao technique had already been destroyed by Yunting's 2 sword divine powers. Although the spirit turtle shield defended against the two supreme divine powers almost perfectly, Su Zimo could still sense the extreme sharpness behind him. Given Su Zimo's current cultivation and powerful essence spirit, he might not be able to break through the spirit turtle shield even if 10 or even 100 grade 9 heavenly immortals released their supreme divine powers at the same time. But now Yun Ting's two supreme divine powers were able to break through his strongest defensive divine power. All these years, he had been improving rapidly and Yun Ting had not stopped as well. Both of them were even stronger and more terrifying than they were thousands of years ago in the Emperor's tomb. Great Five Elements Sword. Yun Ting's attacks did not stop and he released a second wave of attacks before long. Many years ago, a powerful sword immortal was born in the Sword Tao of the Heavenly Realm. He specialized in the Five Elements Sword Tao and eventually entered the Emperor Realm. He dominated the 3,000 realms and had few enemies. And in this life, Yun Ting was the successor of the Five Elements Sword Tao. All this information was recorded in the prediction of the Heaven ranking. Yun Ting alone had obtained more than a dozen Sword Tao legacies. And among these Sword Tao inheritances, even the weakest one was an immortal king. Many of them had left behind inheritances, and they were all Imperial Emperor experts in the Sword Tao. Yun Ting formed a sword finger with both hands and pointed in the direction of Su Zimo. Buzz. The sound of a sharp sword being unsheathed could be heard around Su Zimo, and the void trembled slightly. Immediately after, an endless stream of divine power condensed around Su Zimo, transforming into 5 long swords of different colors. Each long sword represented a different Tao technique, covering metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. They revolved around Su Zimo rapidly, and the tip of the sword locked onto Su Zimo firmly. It was a sealing attack from the power of the 5 elements. Yun Ting was the #1 Sword Tao person in the heavenly realm for many years. Sword Tao represented the pinnacle of killing. The spirit turtle shield just now was broken by Yun Ting's 2 supreme divine powers. If he was only passively defending, Su Zimo would not be able to withstand Yun Ting's endless attacks. Since that was the case, he would fight offense with offense. At that thought, Su Zimo activated his essence spirit, and his hand seals changed continuously, releasing 6 different but related divine powers in succession. Heavenly Tao, Human Tao, Shura Tao, Hungry Ghost Tao, Beast Tao, Hell Tao. 6 paths of reincarnation, condense. Su Zimo used his powerful essence spirit that far surpassed a stage 9 heaven immortal to condense the 6 paths together, releasing a huge vortex that spun continuously, as if it could devour and refine everything in the world. The 6 paths of reincarnation was originally a supreme divine power. However, for some reason after many eras, no one could comprehend the true meaning of the 6 paths of reincarnation. As time passed, the supreme divine ability gradually became a peerless divine ability. Even so, the power of the 6 paths of reincarnation was still a top-notch existence among supreme divine powers. The great 5 element sword spun continuously, trying to kill Su Zimo. On the other hand, the huge vortex formed by the 6 paths of reincarnation pulled at the 5 gigantic swords continuously. The 2 different divine powers collided and devoured each other continuously. Chapter 2574. The 5 gigantic swords were gradually devoured by the 6 paths of reincarnation. At the same time, the gigantic vortex could not withstand the sharpness of the great 5 elements sword and dissipated as well. Permitha Bridge. This time round, Su Zimo took the initiative to attack and released his peerless divine power. Endless heaven-earth essence chi gathered beneath his feet. In the blink of an eye, it formed an ancient bridge that shone with golden light and extended towards Yun Ting. The ancient bridge was filled with runes that condensed Su Zimo's Tao technique and reached the other shore. Wind summoning. Countless streaks of sword chi intertwined and buzzed in Yun Ting's palms. He closed his hands and 2 balls of sword chi collided, creating a massive reaction that formed a storm that connected the heavens and earth that swept towards the Permitha Bridge. This was not a simple hurricane. Instead, it was a sword chi that was condensed from countless sword chi and could kill all living beings and destroy all life. Clang, 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 clang. The ancient bridge resisted the sword chi storm and could not advance any further. The divine powers of both sides collided rapidly. The runes on the ancient bridge flickered. At the same time, the sword chi storm swayed continuously and could collapse at any moment. Without waiting for the outcome of the two peerless divine powers, Yun Ting's hand seals changed once more and he pointed at Su Zimo from afar, hollering, "Summon rain." A torrential rain poured down. Before the rain landed on him, Su Zimo felt a faint stinging pain on his head. He raised his head slightly and looked over with narrowed eyes. Every single drop of rain was sharp like a needle or sword. This was no ordinary rain, it was a terrifying sword rain. When Yun Ting released this ability, it had already undergone a metamorphosis and its power had reached the pinnacle. It was no exaggeration to say that every single drop of rain could kill a grade 9 heavenly immortal. The sword rain enveloped the entire area of the gigantic stone battlefield. It could be said that there was no chance of dodging against that terrifying divine power. Many cultivators were shocked by what they saw. Everyone had long guessed that this battle between paragons would definitely be earth-shattering. However, they did not expect the two of them to release such a terrifying attack without holding back the moment they exchanged blows. One after another, the two of them unleashed top-notch killing exceptional divine abilities without stopping to rest. Such a divine ability that was released without any intervals had an extremely high requirement on the strength of one's essence spirit. If one's primordial spirit wasn't condensed enough, it wouldn't be able to withstand the pressure and would collapse on the spot. Zhong Feiyu smirked and thought to himself, "Fight. Fight. The more you two fight, the better. It's best if both sides suffer." Many cultivators in the crowd looked worried. The battle between the two sides had just begun, and it had already become such an intense stalemate. If either side was the slightest bit careless, then they would suffer heavy injuries or even die. On the boulder battlefield, in the face of Yun Ting's sword rain, Su Zimo remained fearless. He formed a seal with both hands and suddenly took a step forward. As his foot landed, a huge green lotus flower appeared beneath his feet. The lotus bloomed, emitting tens of thousands of rays of light. Thousands of auspicious colors enveloped Su Zimo within, making him appear incomparably divine. Every time Su Zimo took a step, a lotus would appear under his feet. Peerless divine ability, lotus blooming with every step. With each step, everything would become a pure land. The green light emitted by the lotus continuously clashed with the dense sword rain that was descending from the sky. This exceptional divine ability was rarely seen in the Nine Clouds immortal realm. Lotus blooming step was a Buddhist divine ability. Only those who were proficient in Buddhism could possibly comprehend this exceptional divine ability. Even in the Buddhist sects, lotus blooming step was considered a top-notch divine ability. Against Yun Ting's terrifying sword rain, it was not at a disadvantage at all. Su Zimo walked towards Yun Ting, his hands forming seals. Suddenly, 4 balls of flames of different colors appeared beside him. Under his guidance, the balls of flames quickly gathered together, forming an even bigger fireball. It was like a blazing sun, emitting a heart-palpitating heat. This is the secret technique. A heaven immortal in the crowd of the great Jin immortal nation exclaimed. This person had escaped death in Juele City and witnessed the power of this flame secret technique with his own eyes. It could be said to be apocalyptic. This heaven immortal seemed to recall the scene of the past. His body trembled uncontrollably as he said, "This is the secret technique that burned Juele City to the ground. Everyone was buried in the sea of fire, their bodies and souls destroyed." In the Flaming Sun immortal nation, Lai Xian, who was predicted to be 5th on the heaven leaderboard, was speechless. He had faced this secret technique before and knew how terrifying it was. Back then, he had used this secret technique to comprehend the Flaming Sun Sutra to the extreme. If he had been in anyone else's place on the battlefield, he would not have been able to hold on. After the huge fireball formed in front of Su Zimo, even the sword rain that was falling from the sky evaporated instantly. Go! Su Zimo pushed the fireball in his hand in Yunting's direction. At the same time, a divine sense flame entered the fireball. Pentati Dao fire. Boom! The fireball arrived in front of Yunting and exploded instantly. The huge stone battlefield was surrounded by flames, and the flames soared into the sky. The temperature of the entire divine firmament main hall rose rapidly. 4 symbols sword formation. Yunting hollered from within the flames. Immediately after, 4 blinding sword chi condensed rapidly in the flames, transforming into 4 sacred beasts that guarded the 4 directions. The azure dragon's sacred beast summoned clouds and rain. The white tiger's sacred beast's killing intent surged. The vermilion bird's sacred beast was born from flames. The black tortoise sacred beast overturned rivers and seas. The 4 sacred beasts released completely different powers to suppress the Pentati Dao fire. Even so, the Pentati Dao fire could not be extinguished. But the sound of a tsunami could be heard from Yunting's body. Against the powerful flames, Yunting could not withstand it and channeled his blood chi first. He was like an unsheathed sword that revealed its sharpness. Yunting's blood chi was way too strong. Every drop of blood contained a destructive and sharp sword intent. Yunting merely stood on the spot motionlessly. The surging sword blood in his body combined with the 4 symbols sword formation could suppress the Pentati Dao fire. On the huge stone battlefield, although the Pentati Dao fire was not completely extinguished, it could no longer pose any threat to Yunting. Good, good, good. Su Zimo nodded slightly and praised repeatedly. As expected of Yunting, to be able to neutralize the attack of the Pentati Dao fire single-handedly. Furthermore, Su Zimo could clearly sense that Yunting's sword blood was even more ferocious and powerful than thousands of years ago. You're not bad either. The fighting spirit in Yunting's eyes did not weaken at all. Instead, it intensified. Coupled with the power of the sword blood, a torrential killing intent burst forth from his body. It was a terrifying sword intent that could slash through anything, as though it wanted to split the world and sever the void. Yunting's aura was still rising. Under this sword intent, the world was about to be overturned. Chapter 2575. When this sword intent burst forth, not only on the huge stone battlefield, but even the sword cultivators and sword immortals around the divine firmament Great Hall felt a strong shock and impact on their sword hearts. Many sword immortals' swords were trembling, as if they wanted to submit. Mortal Slayer Sword Art. In this world, only the Mortal Slayer Sword Art could unleash such a terrifying killing intent. It could even turn heaven and earth upside down. I can't beat him. Lai Xian's expression was solemn as he said in a low voice. Just this sword art alone is enough for me to resist. Yunting is indeed the top sword Dao cultivator in the heaven world. Even in the sword world, I'm afraid no one can compare to him with this talent. Brother Su has the heavenly slayer and earthly slayer sword art. He should be able to resist it. Xie Qingqing was not confident. Just the heavenly slayer and earthly slayer might not be enough. Lai Xian shook his head slightly. In the mountain and sea immortal sect, Qin Gu's expression changed as he said softly, the Mortal Slayer sword art is Yunting's most powerful move. It seems like the victor is about to be decided. Even the onlooking cultivators felt that the Mortal Slayer sword art's power was unstoppable. No one could imagine what kind of pressure Su Zimo, who was facing Yunting, was facing at this moment. Heaven Slayer, shifting stars. Earth Slayer, dragon and snake rise. Su Zimo did not hesitate to unleash the Heavenly Slayer and Earthly Slayer sword art. Dragon and snake combined attack, Heaven and Earth Slayer. Manslayer, Heaven and Earth overturn. Yunting's voice rang out, but his figure had already disappeared. In his place was a long sword that could tear the heavens and earth apart. The 3 sword arts were all extremely lethal. But the Mortal Slayer sword art also contained an unyielding will that went against the trend and fought against heaven and earth. In terms of intent, the Mortal Slayer sword art firmly suppressed the Heavenly Slayer and Earthly Slayer. Boom! The Mortal Slayer sword art and Heaven and Earth Slayer collided, erupting with a deafening explosion. Countless sword chi surged and splashed in all directions. In an instant, the entire giant stone battlefield was filled with extremely sharp sword chi. Any 9th-tier Heaven Immortal who intruded into it would be shredded to death by these sword energies. After a short stalemate, the dragons and snakes formed by Heavenly Assassin and Earthly Assassin collapsed and died. As for the mortal slaughter sword that Yun Ting had transformed into, it was still standing between heaven and earth, exuding a monstrous killing intent and endless sharpness. The killer of man continued to slash down. Su Zimo's expression didn't change. He was extremely calm. His fingertip quickly wrote a large word in the air: kill. Peerless Theurgy, kill formula. Under normal circumstances, this peerless Theurgy would not be able to resist the human slaughtering sword art. But at this moment, the triple kill of heaven, earth, and man had been fully released. The killing intent on the boulder battlefield had reached its peak. Su Zimo made use of the surrounding murderous intent to unleash the kill character art, pushing the power of the peerless skill to the maximum instantly. The kill character formula not only contained the killing intent of the heavenly kill and earthly kill, but it also absorbed the killing intent of many people. The huge kill character in the air turned incomparably red, as if it was dyed with blood. Even book immortal Yun Zhu, who was known for her handwriting, had never seen such a terrifying kill incantation. So smart. Even Green Sun Immortal King, who was in the middle of the hall, couldn't help but praise when he saw this scene. If this kill incantation had been released earlier, it definitely wouldn't have been as powerful as it was now. It seemed like it was released earlier or later, but the power that erupted was completely different. This was the embodiment of battle talent. Boom! The killer of man and the kill incantation collided, neither giving way to the other. Even with the power of the human slaughtering sword art, it couldn't break the kill incantation. Haha! Yun Ting's laughter suddenly rang out in the boulder battlefield. Awesome, awesome! Yun Ting said loudly, Su Zimo, you're really something. You actually thought of using this method to break my human slaughtering sword art. As soon as he finished speaking, the human slaughtering sword and the kill incantation both collapsed and collapsed. In the vast killing intent, Yun Ting's figure flashed past and charged towards Su Zimo. Su Zimo stomped his feet and soared into the air, charging toward Yun Ting as well. Both of them chose to engage in close combat almost at the same time. I remember that Yun Ting seems to have other trump cards that he hasn't used yet. He's still using the Extreme Sword, the successor of the Heart Sword path. Could it be that he's holding back? Su Zimo should have some trump cards as well. For example, the Theurgy that can reduce one's lifespan, and the secret technique that killed the executioner in an instant on the battlefield in Shura. What do you know? Another cultivator sneered and said, how many Theurgys and secret techniques did they use just now? Moreover, each one of them is a top-tier killing technique, which consumes a lot of primordial spirits. They didn't continue to use their trump cards because their primordial spirits have been exhausted and are extremely weak. After a pause, the person said, they can't even use their primordial spirit secret techniques, let alone Theurgys and secret techniques. Zhong Feiyu's judgment was similar to that person's. If it weren't for that, Su Zimo and Yun Ting wouldn't have switched from a battle of Theurgys and secret techniques to close combat. What a pity! Zhong Feiyu looked slightly disappointed. Ever since he was scared away by Su Zimo on the battlefield in Shura, he had asked his master for a primordial spirit defense Dharma treasure to deal with Su Zimo's reverse-scale secret technique. Judging from the current situation, it seemed that he wouldn't need it. On the battlefield, in the blink of an eye, the two sides were close to each other. Yun Ting clenched his fingers and sword blood circled around his body, emitting a sharp aura. He stabbed toward Su Zimo's glabella. At the same time, a cold aura rose in his eyes. His pupils constricted and two cold sword lights shot out. The surrounding temperature plummeted. Technique, Ice Soul Sword Eyes. Enveloped by the two sword lights, Su Zimo's blood was about to freeze. If he could use his blood chi, this cold aura wouldn't be a threat to Qinglian's true body. But now, Su Zimo could only fight with his eye technique. Illumination Eye. Without hesitation, Su Zimo released a blinding beam of light from his right eye that collided with the two incoming sword lights. His left eye was still shrouded by a mysterious dark power, and he could not release his nether fluorescent eye. However, Yun Ting's Ice Soul Sword eyes were extremely powerful. Back in the Emperor's tomb, it suppressed the Illumination Eye. Today, their eye techniques clashed once more. The Illumination Eye was still unable to defend against the Ice Soul Sword eyes. Although the heat of the Illumination Eye dispelled the sword intent of the Ice Soul Sword eyes, it could not defend against the coldness of the eye technique. Instantly, Su Zimo's body was shrouded in a layer of frost and his movements were hindered. At the same time, Yun Ting's sword fingers were only inches away from his glabella. A smile appeared on Yun Ting's face. Even though Yun Ting's eye technique was slightly suppressed, he managed to seize the opportunity and win with a single strike. Right then, Su Zimo suddenly opened his mouth and let out a deafening roar from the depths of his throat. Instantly, the world went silent. Chapter 2576. The roar contained a supreme will. It was so powerful and dignified that it even made the hearts of the cultivators present tremble. Dragon Roar secret skill was released. When Yun Ting saw Su Zimo open his mouth, he realized what was about to happen and hurriedly released his sound domain technique as well. Slash! Yun Ting shouted, and a long sword condensed from sound suddenly appeared in the air. A sword formed from sound. However, the moment the sword was formed, it was shattered by Su Zimo's Dragon Roar secret skill. Cracks appeared on the sword and it dissipated rapidly. In terms of visual techniques, Yun Ting was superior to Su Zimo. However, he was no match for Su Zimo in terms of sound domain secret skills. The Dragon Roar secret skill had long surpassed the original sound domain secret skills of dragons. It was fused with many Dao techniques such as Thunder, the Roar of the Dragon and Phoenix, and the Roar of the Green Dragon. Even true dragons could not defend against Su Zimo's Dragon Roar secret skill. Of course, the Dragon Roar secret skill could not hurt Yun Ting either. Yun Ting's physique was strong and his sword blood was ferocious. Even without releasing a sound sword, the Dragon Roar secret skill alone could not injure him. However, the Dragon Roar secret skill still caused Yun Ting's movements to pause momentarily. That slight pause was more than enough for Su Zimo. Me! He took half a step back and opened up space slightly. Chanting Sanskrit, he conjured a Buddhist seal and smashed it towards Yun Ting's sword finger. Bang! Fist and finger collided. Yun Ting's sword finger could even penetrate perfect heaven-grade dermic treasures, and only the strongest connate heaven-grade dermic treasures could take it head-on. What was even more frightening was that Yun Ting's sword finger contained an extreme sharpness and the terrifying power of his physical body and sword blood. However, when Yun Ting's sword finger struck Su Zimo's fist, it was as though it had struck an immovable and incomparably tough mountain. Yun Ting's accumulated strength was thwarted and he felt a sharp pain from his sword finger, as though it was about to be snapped. Pissed. Yun Ting gasped slightly with a look of shock in his eyes. There was nothing his sword finger could not penetrate. What body of flesh and blood could withstand it? Back then in the Emperor's tomb, when he released his qi and blood, Su Zimo had to avoid the sharp edge, and his body was covered with small injuries. Back then, Su Zimo had only been able to fight him by relying on his powerful body's self-healing ability. He didn't expect that Su Zimo would be able to fight him head-on and gain the upper hand in close combat today just by relying on his physical body. Today is different from the past. Over the years, Yun Ting had continued to grow, forging the sword body and condensing the sword blood. As for Su Zimo's Qinglian true body, its potential was even greater. It had already grown to the 11th grade, almost reaching the peak. Moreover, Qinglian's real body also practiced the body refining chapter of the 3 Purity Jade books, the Divine Elephant Breathing Technique, the Void Thunder Technique, and many other powerful techniques. Even without using her blood qi, the physique of Qinglian's true body could be said to be unprecedented. Furthermore, Su Zimo released his Six Fangs divine power and his physical strength increased once more. Earlier on, he made use of the Dragon Roar secret skill to turn the tables and released the Sanskrit of the Buddhist monasteries to complement the supreme dermic seal of the Great Vajra-wheel seal. The Great Vajra-wheel seal was unshakable and indestructible. In just a short exchange, Su Zimo had already released many powerful trump cards and gained the upper hand with a show of strength. Yun Ting felt a sharp pain in his sword finger. His sword blood surged and instantly, the pain was resolved. However, the moment his mind wavered, Su Zimo noticed it and immediately after, he opened his mouth and let out another Sanskrit sound. Om. At the same time, Su Zimo's hands conjured hand seals once more and released the Great Mount Meru seal, crushing down on Yun Ting's head. Rumble. Boom. Right in front of many cultivators, an incomparably majestic mountain peak appeared in midair. It was even taller and majestic than Divine Firmament Palace and had a torrential aura. Great Mount Meru? Immortal King Qingyang narrowed his eyes when he saw the mountain peak. This kid's attainments in Buddhism have already reached such a level. He can actually conjure the sacred mountain of the pure land of bliss. Immortal King Qingyang was extremely interested in Su Zimo's identity and background. He even suspected that Su Zimo might be from the pure land of bliss. Gasps could be heard from the surroundings of the Divine Firmament Palace. Many cultivators felt suffocated when they saw such a majestic mountain descend with a heaven-shaking might. How could there be a living being in this world that could withstand such a mountain peak? Lai Xian had a complicated expression when he saw the image of the Great Mount Meru. Back in the battlefield of Shura, he had been suppressed by Su Zimo's 2 dermic seals and had been defeated. At that time, Su Zimo had just fought a fierce battle and was only a Stage 7 Heaven Immortal. Now, this Great Mount Meru was even more powerful than the one he faced in the battlefield of Shura. Under the support of the Prajna Nirvana Sutra, the power of any Buddhist Tao technique would increase explosively. The Great Mount Meru seemed to have enveloped the entire Divine Firmament Palace. Yun Ting, who was on the huge stone battlefield, had nowhere to hide. He could only take it head-on. Rumble. Countless rubble rolled down as a large shadow covered the sky. The momentum was terrifying. Boom. Yun Ting raised one hand, and the sword blood in his body hummed. It was as if countless sharp swords had pierced out of his body to block the descending Great Mount Meru. Under the Great Mount Meru, there was only a seemingly small figure. He raised one arm to the sky, and his figure was as straight as a sword, unmoving. Princess Yun Ting. The many cultivators of the Zixuan Immortal Kingdom were agitated. Their blood boiled as they shouted. This was Yun Ting. Even the Great Meru Mountain couldn't crush him, couldn't cover the sharpness of his body. If Yun Ting's sword blood was allowed to continue attacking, it would not be long before the Great Mount Meru was broken. However, Su Zimo did not give Yun Ting any chance to catch his breath and attacked once more. His fists were like seals, his palms were like sabers, his fingers were like swords and his elbows were like spears. His fists, palms, fingers, claws, elbows, knees and shoulders could release incomparably ferocious attacks from every single part of his body. Yun Ting's melee combat strength was extremely terrifying as well. Sword blood flowed through his body. His sword Tao had already fused into every single inch of his flesh, blood and bones, cultivating to every corner of his body. Even his eyebrows, hair, and the fine hairs on his body were all lethal weapons. Against Su Zimo's attacks, Yun Ting supported the Great Mount Meru with one hand and fought against Su Zimo with the other in an intense battle. The surrounding cultivators watched intently, not daring to blink. Melee combat was extremely dangerous and the outcome could be determined in the blink of an eye. As such, no one dared to be distracted. Initially, both sides were able to exchange blows. However, as time passed by, Yun Ting gradually fell into a disadvantage and retaliated less. He was forced into a defensive stance and was completely suppressed by Su Zimo. Apart from the mystic classic of the 12 Demon Kings of the Great Wilderness, Su Zimo's melee combat techniques were also fused with the killing techniques of dragons. They were all killing techniques that were tempered through countless life and death battles. In reality, Yun Ting's melee combat techniques were not weak. In fact, it could even be said that he was comparable to Su Zimo. However, he was fighting single-handedly after all, and it was already rare for him to be able to persevere until now. Chapter 2577. Yun Ting is going to lose. Xia Qingqing murmured softly. Many cultivators could tell that Yun Ting was bound to lose if the situation was allowed to develop. Not necessarily. Lai Xian shook his head gently. Yun Ting's methods are definitely not limited to this. Lai Xian's expression was conflicted. As a reincarnated perfected immortal who was cultivating anew, he had not expected to encounter peerless monster incarnates such as Yun Ting and Su Zimo in this lifetime. Back in the battlefield of the Shura, he was defeated by Su Zimo's 2 dermic seals of the Buddhist monasteries. However, Yun Ting was able to support the Great Meru Mountain with one hand and fight against Su Zimo with the other until now. The difference between him and Yun Ting was obvious. On the gigantic stone battlefield, Yun Ting realized the severity of the situation as well. Sword light surged in his eyes and he channeled his blood chi to its limits, breaking through the upper limit of tsunami blood. Suddenly, a huge blood-red longsword appeared behind Yun Ting, exuding an extremely sharp murderous aura. The blood-colored sword was even more terrifying than the human-slaying sword intent. Back in the Emperor's tomb, Su Zimo already felt an intense sense of danger when Yun Ting released that bloodline phenomenon. That blood-colored sword was definitely a threat to him. It was the same today. Yun Ting no longer held back and released his bloodline phenomenon. Xing. The blood-colored sword tore through the air and sliced the Great Meru Mountain into 2. Even the majestic and heavy Great Meru Mountain could not defend against the sharpness of the blood-colored sword. Su Zimo narrowed his gaze slightly and his hairs stood on end. Even after thousands of years, that blood-colored sword still sent chills down his spine, as though a calamity was about to descend the next moment. Back in the Emperor's tomb, Su Zimo neutralized Yun Ting's bloodline phenomenon by releasing Essence Spirit secret skills consecutively, causing a strong impact on Yun Ting's Essence Spirit. He only managed to defeat Yun Ting because he did not allow the latter to condense his bloodline phenomenon. Su Zimo did not intend to use his Essence Spirit secret skills in the fight for the top of the heaven ranking today. Yun Ting clearly had the same thoughts. The two of them had never talked about this before, but this was the tacit understanding between the two of them. Moreover, Yun Ting had said that he hadn't fully grasped this bloodline phenomenon and hadn't been able to condense it immediately. But now, Yun Ting was clearly in control of the blood-red sword. Su Zimo. Suddenly, Yun Ting's voice rang out in Su Zimo's mind. Do you know what will happen when the heavenly kill, earthly kill, and human kill come together? It seems to be a supreme divine ability. Su Zimo said. Not bad. Yun Ting continued. When the 3 sword techniques combine into one, it will evolve into a supreme divine ability, the immortal slaying sword. Upon hearing this, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. Staring at the blood-colored sword on Yun Ting's back, he seemed to have understood something. Yun Ting nodded and said, You're right. My bloodline phenomenon is the immortal extermination sword. Back in the Emperor's tomb, I had only cultivated the embryonic form of the immortal extermination sword and hadn't fully grasped it. All these years, I've deduced and perfected the immortal extermination sword. Although it hasn't reached the level of a supreme divine ability, it's already at the threshold of one. Impressive! Su Zimo could not help but exclaim internally. Indeed, Yun Ting's talent in the sword Dao was unparalleled. Even without the heavenly kill, earthly kill, and human kill, he was able to cultivate the embryonic form of the immortal extermination sword with the Dao slaying sword art alone. Furthermore, all these years, he had perfected his control of the immortal extermination sword through his deductions and cultivation. However, without the heavenly kill and earthly kill, Yun Ting's immortal extermination sword was ultimately not perfect and had yet to reach the level of a supreme divine ability. As long as it was not a supreme divine ability, Su Zimo would still have a chance. The moment Yun Ting released the immortal extermination sword bloodline phenomenon, the cultivators present felt their hearts skip a beat. In fact, many cultivators felt chills run down their necks, as though a sharp blade was hanging over their necks that could slice off their heads at any moment. Immortal extermination sword. Immortal King Green's son murmured softly with a hint of fear in his eyes. On the gigantic stone battlefield, Yun Ting carried the immortal extermination sword on his back and instantly reversed his aura. He strode toward Su Zimo and shouted, "Su Zimo, come on! Let me see what else you have up your sleeves." Su Zimo's expression was calm as he conjured hand seals continuously with both hands. Above his head, a vast and boundless star field suddenly appeared. This star field could be roughly divided into 7 regions. Only one of the regions was dark and lightless, while 6 of the star fields had already been lit up. Billions of stars emitted resplendent starlight that scattered down and surged into Su Zimo's acupoints. Mystic Spirit Big Dipper Diagram. In front of everyone, Su Zimo could not even use his bloodline, let alone release the creation Qinglian's bloodline phenomenon. The only thing he could release was the Mystic Spirit Big Dipper Diagram. Su Zimo had already cultivated that secret skill to greater mastery and lit up 6 star domains. With the help of the power of billions of stars, its power was comparable to a bloodline phenomenon once released. When he saw that, Yun Ting shook his head gently. Not enough. With a thought, Yun Ting slashed gently with the immortal extermination sword on his back. Shing! Above the firmaments, the vast starry sky was sliced into 2 by the immortal extermination sword. Instantly, countless stars fell and the Mystic Spirit Big Dipper Diagram was sliced apart by the immortal extermination sword. Star Plucking Hand. With the help of the boundless star domain of the Mystic Spirit Big Dipper Diagram, Su Zimo released a supreme mystic power. Under the cover of the Mystic Spirit Big Dipper Diagram, the star-plucking hand gathered endless starlight and its power increased exponentially. Too weak. Yun Ting shook his head once more and the immortal extermination sword on his back moved, slicing the star-plucking hand into 2 instantly. Wherever the immortal extermination sword's sharpness passed, there was nothing it could not slice apart. Su Zimo, you can admit defeat now. With his hands behind his back, Yun Ting had an arrogant expression as the immortal extermination sword hovered in front of him, ready to slash down at any moment. Su Zimo raised his brows slightly and did not say anything. Yun Ting said, "I know that you may be unwilling or unconvinced. However, this is reality. It's not shameful to lose to the immortal extermination sword. Of course, I won't underestimate you even though I've won today. Among those of the same cultivation level, you're the only one that I, Yun Ting, value. It's because of you that I've become stronger. If you want to challenge me in the future, you're welcome to do so at any time. I hope that you won't be left too far behind after entering the true self stage." Relying on his bloodline phenomenon, the immortal extermination sword, Yun Ting stood on the gigantic stone battlefield and raised his head slightly, speaking confidently with the attitude of a victor. However, to the crowd of cultivators, those words sounded like a matter of course. It was not shameful to lose to Yun Ting. Qin Gu and Zhong Feiyu both had smiles on their faces. Although Yun Ting and Su Zimo were not both injured, both of them had already released most of their trump cards. The end of this battle would be their chance. Suddenly, Su Zimo laughed and looked at Yun Ting, who was confident of victory. "Who gave you the confidence to think that you can suppress me with an incomplete bloodline phenomenon?" Chapter 2578. Humph. Yun Ting was displeased that Su Zimo refused to admit defeat. He had given Su Zimo a way out on account of his sister. To think that Su Zimo would not know what was good for him. Since that's the case, don't blame me for teaching you a lesson. Slash. With a thought, Yun Ting pointed in the direction of Su Zimo and the immortal vanquishing sword behind him transformed into a streak of blood light that slashed forward. Su Zimo had a calm expression and did not dodge as his hands changed continuously. The impermanence of all actions is the dharma of life and death. The creation and death of thoughts are all impermanence. Su Zimo muttered a few obscure sutras and released an incomparably sacred dermic seal that was filled with Buddhist light. It was one of the 3 secret techniques of the forbidden mystic manual, the Prajna Nirvana Sutra, the impermanence seal. Everything in the world was ever-changing. Everything was in a cycle of life, death, and destruction. Be it divine powers, mystic arts, or bloodline phenomenons that Yun Ting released, they were all part of the various actions. All actions were impermanent and ever-changing. The moment the impermanence seal collided with Yun Ting's bloodline phenomenon, the life and death of the immortal vanquishing sword was within his thoughts. The impermanence seal came from the true forbidden mystic manual and was one of the 3 great dermic seals of the Buddhist monasteries. The remaining 2 dermic seals of the Buddhist monasteries were also recorded in the Prajna Nirvana Sutra. However, given Su Zimo's current cultivation realm and comprehension of Buddhism, he could not comprehend it even with the Bodhi seed. The remaining 2 dermic seals were of an even higher level and he could not come into contact with them. Sush. The immortal vanquishing sword slashed down and collided with the impermanence seal. In front of countless gazes, the blood-colored sword dissipated instantly and vanished. The entire divine firmament hall was in an uproar. Yun Ting's bloodline phenomenon was so domineering earlier on and easily destroyed 2 of Su Zimo's divine powers and mystic arts. To think that it would be resolved by a mysterious dermic seal. Yun Zhu's expression changed in deep thought. She knew that Su Zimo had once obtained the health-suppressing tripod and cultivated the Prajna Nirvana Sutra. He also knew that there were 3 Dharma seals in this taboo manual. It should be the seal of impermanence. As expected of a taboo manual. Yun Zhu nodded. If Yun Ting's bloodline phenomenon could reach the level of a true supreme divine ability, it would be very difficult for the impermanence seal to nullify it. It was a pity that Yun Ting had never seen the heavenly kill and earthly kill, these 2 great sword techniques. That bloodline phenomenon was merely at the threshold of a supreme divine power and had yet to reach the level of a supreme divine power. On the giant stone battlefield, Yun Ting frowned. Back then, during the Earthboard battle, he had seen Su Zimo release this Buddhist seal to neutralize Feng Yin's divine ability, but he did not take it to heart. To think that the Buddhist dermic seal would be able to dispel his bloodline phenomenon. Yun Ting was infuriated. He had just thought that victory was in his grasp, so he said a lot of words. He didn't expect that in the blink of an eye, the situation would change again, making him feel a burst of heat on his face. Well. Yun Ting harumphed coldly and grit his teeth. Since you refuse to admit defeat, I won't hold back any longer. I'll let you witness my true trump card. Buzz. Yun Ting's spirit consciousness moved and a sword that shone with lightning suddenly appeared in his palm. Although the sword was surrounded by lightning, it could not conceal the sharpness of the sword. It was extremely sharp and as it buzzed, Su Zimo felt a slight stinging sensation on his face. This sword is called Divine Firmament. It has followed me in battle for many years and has never been defeated. The fact that Yun Ting named his personal sword Divine Firmament was enough to show his ambition and boldness. Divine Firmament is a sword that I obtained from a divine stone in a sea of lightning when I entered an ancient ruin by chance. I refined it for 49 years before I obtained it. Su Zimo focused his gaze. He could vaguely see a few lightning burn marks on the Divine Firmament sword. It was extremely similar to the spiritual Dharma treasures used by perfected immortals. Normally speaking, when a cultivator entered the perfected one realm and attracted the perfected one heavenly tribulation to refine their Dharma treasures, they would be able to nurture a spiritual consciousness and evolve into a spiritual Dharma treasure. However, there would only be a few lightning burn marks left on a spiritual Dharma treasure. If a Dharma treasure could attract 99 heavenly tribulations, it would be a 9th tribulation numinous treasure and could also be called a pure yang numinous treasure. Yun Ting's sword was originally nurtured in the sea of lightning at the side. When the Divine Firmament sword was at greater mastery, it had its own burn marks and nurtured a spiritual consciousness, comparable to a spiritual Dharma treasure. It was also because of that Qinglian's true body could feel a sharp pain even before she came into contact with the divine firmament sword. The divine firmament sword was indeed a rare divine weapon. Even Qinglian's true body could not take it head-on. However, Su Zimo's expression was calm. He had quite a number of Dharma treasures on him, and they were definitely not weaker than the divine firmament sword. You should know that my sword Dao is my strongest reliance. Yun Ting wielded the divine firmament sword and stroked it gently with his finger as he said proudly, "Initially, I did not want to summon the divine firmament sword. However, since we've fought to this extent, it's fine. I'll let you have a taste of the divine firmament sword's sharpness." The moment he said that, Yun Ting flicked the sword gently with his finger. Clang, clang. The divine firmament sword buzzed and vibrated. Its sword chi surged and crackled with electric arcs. Instantly, it vanished from the spot and stabbed towards Su Zimo. The divine firmament sword was too fast and could not be seen with the naked eye. Apart from killing, the speed of the sword Dao was also ranked at the top among the Dao techniques. Apart from the speed of the sword Dao, the divine firmament sword was also augmented by the Dao of thunder. With the power of thunder, it was even faster. The moment the sword hum sounded, the divine firmament sword had already arrived before Su Zimo. Yun Ting's figure seemed to have vanished. Most of the cultivators in the crowd could not capture Yun Ting's figure, let alone Su Zimo who was standing opposite him. Yun Ting had already fused perfectly with the divine firmament sword. He was one with the sword. Even one's spirit consciousness could not detect Yun Ting's figure, let alone the naked eye. Yun Ting's sword Dao was indeed terrifying. If it was anyone else, they would not have been able to defend against that sword strike. However, Su Zimo reacted extremely quickly and blocked his five senses immediately. He retracted his spirit consciousness and relied on his spirit perception to sense the danger. Clang! Suddenly, a green beam of light flew out from Su Zimo's glabella. A jade scepter flew out. It did not take on the sharpness of the divine firmament sword head-on. Instead, it struck the spine of the divine firmament sword accurately with a crisp sound. The divine firmament sword shuddered. Normally speaking, the three treasures jade scepter could disperse the essence chi of dermic treasures and spirit consciousness. Any dermic treasure that collided with it would be struck down. However, Yun Ting was fused with the divine firmament sword and lightning coiled around it. The collision of the three treasures jade scepter did not strike the divine firmament sword down. Even so, the divine firmament sword paused in midair for a moment and revealed an opening. Chapter 2579. Su Zimo's eyes shone brightly. Unknowingly, a horsetail whisk had appeared in his hands and he flicked his wrist gently. With a swoosh, 3,000 strands of silver whisk tore through the air and surged towards the divine firmament sword and Yun Ting with a terrifying might. Yun Ting frowned slightly. Naturally, he could tell that Su Zimo's horsetail whisk was not easy to deal with. The 3,000 strands of silver were not much of a threat to him. However, if he were to fall into the silver river formed by the 3,000 strands of silver, he would definitely sink deeper and deeper. His movement technique would be restricted and he would not be able to unleash the true might of his sword Dao. In melee combat, it was extremely important to seize the initiative. Yun Ting did not want to be passive. At that thought, Yun Ting swayed slightly and his entire body turned blurry. His figure faded, as though he had escaped into the unknown void and was no longer in this world. The top movement secret skill of the upper world, sword traversing the great void. The reason why that movement technique was powerful was because sword traversing the great void had already touched upon the Tao and Dharma of space. One could traverse the great void to avoid danger and break free from predicaments. The silver river formed by the 3,000 strands of silver charged towards Yun Ting. However, Yun Ting and the divine firmament sword disappeared mysteriously. That was not teleportation. Instead, he vanished into thin air from the battlefield and escaped into the great void. That was an extremely shocking move. When the 3,000 strands of silver were exhausted and the silver river weakened, Yun Ting would suddenly appear with the Divine Firmament Sword and launch a counterattack against Su Zimo. Right then, a strange look flashed through Su Zimo's eyes. A series of wondrous nimble chessboards appeared in his mind. Those chessboards flashed before his eyes one by one and finally stopped at the 8th nimble chessboard. The key to breaking through the 8th nimble chessboard was the Tao of Space. Earlier on, Su Zimo made use of the spirit potency art and the power of Wu Dao's true body to break through the 8th nimble chessboard. Although he could not control that power yet, the method to break through the game was already imprinted in his mind. Right in front of everyone, Yun Ting had already escaped into the great void with the help of his sword Tao and disappeared. However, under Su Zimo's gaze, the gigantic stone battlefield that the two of them were on was a nimble chessboard. Yun Ting's position could be seen clearly with nowhere to hide. Yun Ting's figure entered the great void and was ready to counterattack. However, when he was in the great void, he suddenly realized that Su Zimo was staring at him intently. Those eyes of his could penetrate through the layers of the void. How is that possible? Yun Ting's chessboard What's going on? He released his movement techniques consecutively and dove into the void one after another. However, Su Zimo's gaze followed him like a shadow the entire time, piercing his back like a dagger. For a moment, Yun Ting felt as though he was a monkey that was being toyed with, jumping around. All of a sudden, a silver spear suddenly pierced through the void and appeared in front of him in an instant. It went straight for the back of his head. It was only at this moment that Yun Ting was truly convinced that Su Zimo could see through his tracks. He slashed in reverse and collided with the incoming spear. Clang! Sparks flew everywhere as the sword and spear collided. This long spear was actually shaken by his sword and scattered into silvery white strands. Chapter 2580. Yun Ting and his sword were already dizzy from being hammered by Su Zimo's 3 heads and 6 arms. Gradually, he could not hold on any longer and was struggling. To think that Su Zimo would summon another primordial beginning body. With that, it was as though Yun Ting was facing 4 Su Zimos. This is too much of a bully. Yun Ting's expression darkened as he cursed internally. At that moment, there was only a single thought in his mind. After today, he had to cultivate the peerless divine power, 3 heads, 6 arms. The primordial beginning body was formed and transformed into the form of the taboo dragon phoenix. Together with the 3-headed, 6-armed Su Zimo, they attacked Yun Ting ferociously as well. The pressure on Yun Ting increased. Although the taboo dragon phoenix did not have any divine weapons, it was still a primordial beginning body condensed from the clear jade manual and was extremely powerful. Yun Ting would not feel good if he was punched or kicked as well. However, he grit his teeth and persevered, unwilling to admit defeat. Su Zimo must have expended a lot of energy to release such a ferocious attack using 3 heads 6 arms and could not last long. As the saying went, one's peak was bound to decline. Relying on his strong physique and sword blood, Yun Ting gritted his teeth and held on, waiting for Su Zimo to be exhausted so that he could counterattack. However, as time passed by, Yun Ting felt more despair. After an entire incense stick's worth of time, Su Zimo's attacks did not weaken. Instead, they became even more ferocious with a stronger aura. Yun Ting was merely defending passively, but he felt that he could not hold on any longer. He felt dizzy and his vision turned black. How could Yun Ting know that the strongest aspect of Qinglian's true body was its recovery ability? Even if it was a huge battle, Qinglian's true body would be able to withstand it, let alone an incense stick's worth of time. Isn't this way too tragic? After all, it's 1 against 4. It's hard for 2 fists to fight against 8 hands. It's not Yun Ting's fault. Why does it feel like he's teaching a junior a lesson? In the Divine Firmament main hall, the thousands of cultivators were dumbfounded when they saw that. No one had expected that the battle would end up in such a situation. Yun Ting, who was predicted to be number 1 on the heaven leaderboard, was cornered by Su Zimo in a corner of the giant rock battlefield. Yun Ting was showered with a barrage of punches, unable to retaliate at all. In the direction of the Zhixian Immortal Kingdom, Yunju suddenly burst into laughter. Mo Qing saw that Yun Ting was bound to lose. She was worried about Yunju and kept looking at them. "Sister, are you okay?" she asked worriedly when she saw the smile on Yunju's face. Yunju seemed to be in a good mood. "Very good." Yunju smiled and nodded. She paused for a moment, then said, "It's good that Yunting lost. It'll teach him a lesson that there is always someone better than him." Mo Qing nodded and said, "Junior brother Su's victory was a little unfair. He had 3 heads and 6 arms, and he had a clone. It was a bit of a bully." Of course, this was just a polite remark to comfort Yunju. However, the cultivators of the Zhixian Immortal Kingdom nodded. Some of the cultivators looked resentful. They were unwilling to accept the fact that Yunting had lost. They said, "That's right. If it was a one-on-one battle, Yunting would definitely be able to defeat Su Zimo." Yunju said indifferently, "Whether it's the 3 heads and 6 arms or the primordial body, they are all trump cards of others. Naturally, he can use them as he wishes. If Yunting can summon 180 clones, it'll be considered his ability." Hearing this, the cultivators of the Zhixian Immortal Kingdom did not dare to complain, although they were unwilling to accept it. Yunju looked at the 2 people on the giant rock battlefield with a relaxed expression. She was so happy not because the 2 people on the giant rock battlefield were about to emerge as the winner. No matter who won or lost in this battle, she could accept it. Her only worry was that the 2 of them would be injured or even die because of this. Only now did she feel relieved. That was because she realized that both of them had held back in this battle and did not fight to the death. Both of them had a tacit understanding and did not use their primordial spirit's secret techniques. Furthermore, be it Su Zimo or Yun Ting, both of them had left some leeway. Otherwise, Yunting would have been defeated long ago. Unlike the cultivators of the Qianquan Academy and the Zhixian Immortal Kingdom, Qin Gu of the Mountain and Sea Immortal Sect and Zhong Feiyu of the Flying Celestial Sect were secretly delighted. The longer the 2 of them fought, the more exhausted they would be, and the more advantageous it would be for them. On the giant rock battlefield. I'm done. In the corner, Yunting, who had been beaten up by Su Zimo for half an hour, could not hold on any longer. He panted and shouted loudly. When Su Zimo heard Yunting's words, he did not continue to beat him up. Instead, he moved his body and retreated. Yunting was drenched in sweat and did not care how many people were looking at him. He sat down on the ground and panted heavily. He was not injured, but Su Zimo's 3 heads and 6 arms combined with the primordial body made him feel sore and exhausted. Yunting took out a handful of immortal elixirs from his storage bag and swallowed them all, trying to absorb and refine them as much as possible. The primordial body could not hold on any longer and gradually dissipated. The clear jade book turned into a ray of green light and returned to Su Zimo's sea of consciousness. The 3 heads and 6 arms also dissipated. In reality, Su Zimo could no longer maintain his supreme mystic powers as well. Without the 6 fangs divine power and the 3 heads and 6 arms, his strength would be greatly reduced. However, Yunting really could not hold on any longer. Moreover, he could see that if Su Zimo had been willing to go all out, he would not have been able to hold on until now. On the giant rock battlefield, one of them was wearing a green robe and had a ruddy complexion, looking calm and composed. The other was sitting on the ground, panting and sweating profusely. The outcome was clear. He won. In the Flaming Sun Immortal Kingdom, Xie Qingcheng clenched his fists and said excitedly, "Brother Su is the first on the heaven roll this year." He was truly happy for Su Zimo. Lai Xian looked calm and shook his head slightly. Su Zimo has indeed defeated Yunting, but he might not be the first on the heaven roll. What do you mean? Xie Qingcheng frowned and asked. Lai Xian glanced at Qin Gu and Zhong Feiyu, who were not far away, and said, "Those 2 over there will definitely not give up." Could it be that they still want to challenge Brother Su? Xie Qingcheng's heart sank. Brother Su has used up too much energy in this battle and has used up all his trump cards. What are those 2 doing? Taking advantage of him? Lai Xian was extremely calm. He analyzed. The battle between Su Zimo and Yunting was originally a battle that went against the rules. Although the Divine Firmament Palace had tacitly agreed, they did not express their support. According to the rules, the first on the heaven roll has to go through many ranking battles to convince the public. If Qin Gu and Zhong Feiyu insist on this point, the Divine Firmament Palace can't say anything. They can't just abolish the rules of the heaven roll that have been in place for so many years just because of Su Zimo and Yunting. Xie Qingcheng frowned and asked, "Is there any way to resolve this?" Lai Xian shook his head and sighed. Although the battle between the two has determined the winner and the loser, others have taken advantage of it. They want to take advantage. At this moment, Xieling suddenly spoke and said meaningfully, "I'm afraid it won't be so easy to take advantage of this." Chapter 2581. At the Mountain and Sea Celestial Sect. Qin Gu looked at the two people on the battlefield and squinted his eyes. "What are you trying to do?" Just as Qin Gu was about to stand up, the chess deity Jun Yu seemed to have sensed something and suddenly spoke. Jun Yu did not turn her head. She only glanced sideways as if she had seen through Qin Gu's thoughts. She asked calmly, "Are you trying to take advantage of them?" Her tone was calm, but there was a hint of sternness in it. Qin Gu hesitated slightly. If it were an ordinary celestial being, facing such a question from the chess deity, he would not dare to have any other thoughts. However, Qin Gu was a reincarnated celestial being. When he was reincarnated, the chess deity Jun Yu had yet to rise. From this point of view, Jun Yu was just a junior in front of him. Qin Gu pondered for a while before saying slowly, "That's not right. According to the rules of the heaven list, I have the right to challenge them. It's not taking advantage of them. The two of them fought to this extent because of their own choice. It has nothing to do with me. I want to be the top of the heaven list, not only for myself, but also for the glory of the sect." Qin Gu's words were very powerful. Not only did he defuse Jun Yu's question, but he also raised the topic and linked the top of the heaven list with the glory of the sect. After all, the chess deity Jun Yu was from the Mountain and Sea Celestial Sect. Qin Gu knew that even if she wanted to stop him, she could not say anything. Jun Yu's eyes flashed with a hint of mockery as if she had already seen through Qin Gu's thoughts. She said, "Do as you wish. Take care of yourself." At the same time, at the Flying Celestial Sect, Zhong Feiyu stared at Su Zimo on the battlefield with murderous intent and was about to stand up. "Meng Yao, I will definitely kill this guy and avenge you." Zhong Feiyu relied on his identity as a reincarnated celestial being to call Meng Yao by her name and did not address her as senior sister. "Thank you, Brother Zhong." Meng Yao nodded slightly and reminded him, "However, you still have to be careful. Be careful that Su Zimo has a backup plan." "Don't worry." Zhong Feiyu smirked and said, "I'm prepared." On the boulder battlefield, Yunting took a few deep breaths and swallowed many immortal elixirs. Gradually, his breathing stabilized as he looked at Su Zimo with a conflicted expression. "You've won this time round, but I'm not convinced." "Oh." Su Zimo heard the hidden meaning in Yunting's words and couldn't help raising an eyebrow. Yunting was just about to speak when two people stepped forward from the crowd. They were Qin Gu from the Mountain and Sea Immortal Sect and Zhong Feiyu from the Flying Immortal Sect. These two people stared at them. Their eyes were like torches, their auras overflowed into the heavens, and their battle intent surged. Yunting's face darkened. He suddenly stood up, looked at Qin Gu and Zhong Feiyu, and slowly asked, "What do you two want?" "It's nothing." Qin Gu said solemnly, "The heaven roll contest naturally has its own rules. The first place of the heaven leaderboard is not something that can be decided by the two of you." "Exactly." Zhong Feiyu stared at Su Zimo maliciously. "If you want to be the top of the heaven board, you have to ask my flying fish sword first. F***ck your mother's bullsh***. Yunting had just been beaten up by Su Zimo and had nowhere to vent his anger. Now that he saw Zhong Feiyu and Qin Gu acting so shamelessly, he couldn't help but curse. Yunting spat at the two of them and said, Normally, even if the two of you come at me together, you won't be able to stop my divine cloud sword. Zhong Feiyu sneered. The heaven roll contest has to follow the rules. You can't blame others for your actions. If you want to be the top of the heaven leaderboard, you have to convince everyone. What does it have to do with us? After a short pause, Zhong Feiyu looked around and said loudly, "It's not just us. Some of the geniuses here also disagree." In fact, everyone could see that Su Zimo had defeated Yun Ting. That was why he was the top of the heaven leaderboard. However, many of the cultivators were just there to watch the show. Now that Qin Gu and Zhong Feiyu had stepped forward, there were people who immediately agreed and shouted that they were not convinced. In an instant, the crowd echoed and their voices shook the heavens. On the giant stone battlefield, Yun Ting's face darkened. His eyes were filled with killing intent. Su Zimo, on the other hand, looked calm and did not say a word. "Ha!" Zhong Feiyu laughed and suppressed the crowd. He said, "Su Zimo, you've seen it too. This is what the crowd is thinking. If you want to be the top of the heaven leaderboard, you have to convince everyone." Qin Gu nodded and looked at Green Sun Immortal King. "According to the rules of the heaven leaderboard, the two of us will definitely face Su Zimo and Yun Ting in the ranking battle. This is reasonable." Green Sun Immortal King said, "That's true. How shameless." Many disciples of Qiankuan Academy were indignant. Mo Qing also frowned slightly. She was worried and said softly, "Why don't we ask junior brother Su to step back and give up on the heaven leaderboard?" Yang Ruoxun nodded and said, "This is indeed safer. In fact, in everyone's hearts, brother Su is already the top of the heaven leaderboard. There's no need for him to fight for the title." Yun Zhu looked calm and smiled. She gently held Mo Qing's hand and comforted her. "Don't worry. The two of them know what they're doing." On the giant stone battlefield, Yun Ting turned his head and looked at Su Zimo. He suddenly asked, "How is it? Can you fight again?" "Of course." Su Zimo nodded. "Great." Yun Ting's eyes lit up. "Let's each pick an opponent and see who wins first." In fact, he still had some trump cards that he did not use in the battle just now. These trump cards were powerful killing moves. Once they were used, even he would not be able to control them. He would either die or be injured. Yun Ting wanted to win against Su Zimo, but deep in his heart, he did not want to kill Su Zimo. Moreover, he vaguely felt that Su Zimo and his sister seemed to be very close. Even if it was for Yun Zhu's sake, he did not want to hurt Su Zimo's life. That was why he had said that sentence just now. "You win this time, but I'm not convinced." Now that both of them had chosen an opponent, there was no need to hold back. They could fight freely and fight. From this point of view, the battle between the two of them had not ended. Yun Ting wanted to use this method to show Su Zimo his powerful trump card. He wanted to compete with Su Zimo. Sure. Su Zimo naturally knew what Yun Ting was thinking. He agreed without hesitation. "You choose first." "I'm fine with anything." On the battlefield, the two of them did not hide their conversation. The thousands of cultivators in the Divine Firmament main hall, including Qin Gu and Zhong Feiyu, heard it clearly. The cultivators were dumbfounded. What are the two of them doing? They are not worried at all. Instead, they are choosing their opponents? They are not just looking down on Qin Gu and Zhong Feiyu. They are completely ignoring them. Qin Gu and Zhong Feiyu, the two reincarnated perfected immortals, were like fish on a chopping block in the conversation between Su Zimo and Yun Ting. These two butchers were simply talking about who could kill faster. If he wanted to counterattack, he would definitely be severely injured by the Divine Firmament Sword. He might even die on the spot. This was the power of the Extreme Sword Dao. Of course, Qin Gu did not give up. As a reincarnated perfected immortal, he was experienced and knowledgeable. Naturally, he could tell that the Extreme Sword Dao was not without its weakness. As long as he could defend and wait until Yun Ting's blood essence was completely burned away, he would not need to counterattack. The one who would be defeated in the end would definitely be Yun Ting. On the first battlefield, Zhong Feiyu summoned his flying fish sword and glared at Su Zimo with a grin. Without hesitation, he activated his Essence Spirit secret skill right away. His judgment was simple. Su Zimo must have exhausted his Essence Spirit after releasing so many divine powers and secret skills in his battle with Yun Ting. He had just witnessed Su Zimo's melee combat strength with his own eyes. Even Yun Ting was not a match for him, and he did not want to be dragged into the melee combat to increase unnecessary variables. He wanted to find Su Zimo's weakness and kill him in a single strike. Zhong Feiyu's spirit consciousness condensed and transformed into a sword chi that burst forth. Su Zimo had a calm expression and did not dodge. In fact, he did not even use his Essence Spirit secret skill to take it head-on. When the sword chi entered Su Zimo's glabella, it was shattered by the Qinglian sword conjured by the son of Qinglian. Qinglian's Essence Spirit was unharmed. Immediately after, a dragon scale flew out from Su Zimo's glabella. Essence Spirit secret skill, reverse scale. This scene was extremely similar to the battle between the two in the Azura battlefield. This time, Zhong Feiyu was prepared. When he saw Su Zimo summon his reverse scale, he did not panic and released a second Essence Spirit secret skill as well. His spirit consciousness transformed into a white silverfish and crashed towards the reverse scale. The two great spirit consciousnesses collided. Zhong Feiyu's expression changed drastically. An almost destructive power suddenly descended upon his sea of consciousness, directly affecting his primordial spirit. Fortunately, he was prepared and asked for an Essence Spirit Defense Dharma treasure from his master. Even so, his Essence Spirit was still slightly shaken. Moreover, cracks had appeared on his primordial spirit Dharma treasure, and its light had dimmed. It was just a clash of Essence Spirit secret skills, and the Essence Spirit Dharma treasure was completely crippled. In the battle in Shura, Su Zimo was only a level 7 heavenly immortal back then. Now, he was a level 8 heavenly immortal. Even without the Six Fangs divine power, his Essence Spirit was far beyond that of a level 9 heavenly immortal. With the help of the Six Fangs divine power, his Essence Spirit power had already touched the threshold of the true self realm. This situation was extremely rare. There was an unimaginable and insurmountable gap between the heavenly origin realm and the true self realm. At the peak of the heavenly origin realm, only after passing the heavenly tribulation of the true self realm would one have the chance to condense a Tao fruit and enter the true self realm. On the other hand, Su Zimo's Essence Spirit was based on the Taboo Nirvana Sutra and combined with the Qinglian and Dragon Phoenix primordial spirits. Together with the Six Fangs divine power, he was able to make up for the huge gap between the two realms. Su Zimo speculated that if he cultivated to level 9 heavenly immortal, his Essence Spirit might even have the chance to surpass the heavenly origin realm and reach the true self realm. With the strength of his divine sense, it was easy to imagine the destructive power of the reverse scale. If Zhong Feiyu did not have that Essence Spirit Defense Dharma treasure, he would have been instantly killed by the reverse scale. Zhong Feiyu's heart tightened and his face turned pale. How could this be? This person could still use a Essence Spirit secret skill after fighting with Yun Ting for so long? Moreover, how could this Essence Spirit secret skill be so terrifying? You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.